Chapter 1579. Then, the 1,000-mile-long glacier surged up. All the ice cubes were sent flying. The cold air that had accumulated for hundreds of thousands of years was released from the bottom of the glacier. Boom! A gust of cold air instantly erupted. Then, a frost dragon claw suddenly reached out from the bottom of the glacier. Just this claw alone was already as big as a mountain. It was as if a 1,000-feet-tall mountain was just a small stone in the hands of the latter. The three wardens also widened their eyes. A powerful existence from the same era as the elder ancestor. Now it was finally going to be awakened. Last time, when the evil dragon god wreaked havoc on Dragon Island, this elder ancestor did not wake up. Now, under the pressure of Li Zhongjiu's powerful strength, it was finally going to appear. To them, it was naturally a very exciting thing. They just watched it happen. Li Zhongjiu also stood in the air. He stared at the scene below. Immediately Li Zhongjiu looked. His eyes also saw through the entire appearance of the frost dragon at the bottom of the glacier. This guy's body was at least 100,000 meters long. 100,000 meters? That was a full 200 miles. This glacier that was 10,000 miles long? To the ice blast Wyrm. It was just a slightly made bed. Under such an environment, it had been frozen for so long. This was normal. If such a big guy were to take action, it would really destroy the topography of the Dragon Island with just a casual stomp. Li Zhongjiu looked at the real giant beast that appeared. Among all the giant beasts that Li Zhongjiu had seen, there was only one that was comparable to this frost dragon in front of him. And only one that he had never seen before? The chaotic world demon monkey. Back then, Li Zhongjiu had only seen one of its hands. It easily captured the beast god temple. The beast god temple was huge, but in the hands of the latter, it was like a small wooden stick. But in terms of size, who was stronger? They would only know after a real comparison. Innate level 5. Li Zhongjiu took one look and determined the strength of this frost dragon. It was very precious for the dragon tribe to be able to enter the primordial realm. Among the human tribe, only Li Zhongjiu and Qi Yinran had officially entered the primordial realm. In Li Zhongjiu's opinion, the Black Sea Overlord might be on the same level as the Ice Blast Wyrm in front of him. As for how long it had existed, it was hard to determine. Li Zhongjiu wouldn't have been able to do anything to the Frost Wyrm if he had the same strength as before. Unfortunately, Li Zhongjiu forcibly broke through under the pressure of the mysterious Black Soul. He endured the pain of refining the primal chaos force and made a breakthrough in his cultivation. With his current strength, now, it was no longer difficult for Li Zhongjiu to deal with the Ice Blast Wyrm in front of him. But after all, the Ice Blast Wyrm was a real ancient giant beast. He still had to be careful when fighting with it. It was okay to defeat it, but there was still a gap between them. Li Zhongjiu stepped on the Primordius bell. The Ice Blast Wyrm's huge body woke up on the glacier. After waking up, it didn't say anything. It opened its mouth and spat out a frost force towards Li Zhongjiu. The air along the way was frozen into thick ice. Li Zhongjiu could also feel the chilling air around him. It seemed that to extinguish the fire in the Blackwater Forest, he really needed such a strong frost force. But before that, he obviously had to defeat this arrogant guy in front of him. The chaos bell vibrated slightly, then a vibrating force swept out. It shattered all the cold energy that was released from below. Boom boom boom. The frost spat out by the Ice Blast Wyrm was easily shattered by Li Zhongjiu. It seemed that Li Zhongjiu had a treasure in his hands. The Ice Blast Wyrm didn't hold back. With a flip of its claws, it threw countless ice cubes at Li Zhongjiu at lightning speed. Boom! The ice cubes quickly swept over. Li Zhongjiu's figure flickered, and he suddenly rushed down. He easily shattered the ice cubes with his body. Boom boom boom. In the blink of an eye, he rushed in front of the Ice Blast Wyrm. In fact, Li Zhongjiu had rich combat experience against such a giant beast. And compared to the Hydra, his speed was much slower. He was already very slow. Li Zhongjiu's training in the evil dragon's eye back then could be considered to have truly displayed his formidable strength. Whoosh whoosh. In a flash, he directly approached the Ice Blast Wyrm. Immediately, the ice blast Wyrem also spat out frost, trying to freeze Li Zhongjie. However, Li Zhongjie's speed was too fast, and he easily dodged the opponent's frost. At the same time, he went behind the ice blast Wyrem and fiercely punched the latter's head. Boom! But the ice blast Wyrem had been under the ice for many years. It had long formed such a strong and sturdy ice armor. The ice armor blocked Li Zhongjie's punch. Suddenly, the aura around the ice blast Wyrem kept flowing, forming an extremely strong frost current. Like a frost tornado, it wrapped Li Zhongjie in it. Immediately, Li Zhongjie couldn't escape. He was swept up by this frost tornado to a height of 10,000 meters. Boom boom boom. Li Zhongjie received the power of thunder. In an instant he fell down. The power of thunder instantly spread all over the ice blast Wyrem's body. In the distance, the three wardens of the draconic prison were stunned. They stared at the battle in front of them with their mouths agape. To them, it was simply too shocking. His cultivation was too strong. He could split heaven and earth at the slightest move. From the looks of it, it seemed that their frost dragon patriarch was the one at a disadvantage. After a series of battles, the ice blast Wyrem ancestor was forced to retreat again and again. At the same time, the ice blast Wyrem ancestor was almost in a passive state. It could only rely on its big moves to force Li Zhongjie away. But in just a few seconds, it was already close to the ice blast Wyrem ancestor again, and then gave it a beating. In terms of strength, if the ice blast Wyrem wanted to defeat the three wardens of the draconic prison, it was just a matter of a slap. However, Li Zhongjie was able to force the ice blast Wyrem ancestor into such a state, which was indeed amazing. In fact, Ancestor Frost is already very powerful. The three wardens of draconic prison were also discussing the battle. Surprisingly, they were also analyzing the situation in front of them. At the same time, they were gloating over Ancestor Frost's misfortune. With regards to Li Zhongjie's strength, they were now completely convinced. Fortunately, Li Zhongjie did not have the hobby of unifying the world. Otherwise, the Dragon Clan would definitely be enslaved by Li Zhongjie. But in fact, this matter was also Ancestor Frost's fault. She didn't say anything before they started fighting. At least, she should have asked what was going on. It was only a matter of time before Li Zhongjie took down the Ice Blast Wyrem. The Ice Blast Wyrem was from the Dragon Clan. It was also very resistant to beatings, so now it could barely compete with Zhongjie. However, Li Zhongjie was bound to find his opponent's weakness. In fact, if Li Zhongjie took the unparalleled sword, then it would be much easier to destroy the Ice Blast Wyrem. But since the Ice Blast Wyrem wanted to put up a desperate struggle, Li Zhongjie would give it a good beating. Just when the two top experts were fighting, suddenly, a sharp sword aura was felt. Suddenly, it was released from the space. As if the space in front of them had been broken, a figure appeared in front of them. It was Qi Yanran, who was holding the blue bird sword. What? The Great Frost Formation was broken? It was broken. Oh my god! The Great Frost Formation had existed on Dragon Island for a long time. Many people even wanted to break the formation to obtain the inheritance of the Ice Blast Wyrem. But obviously, none of these dragons succeeded. Therefore, the Great Frost Formation had become one of the most difficult challenges. For tens of thousands of years, no one could break it. But now it was finally broken, and the one who did it was a human. The three wardens were dumbfounded once again. Yanran. Li Zhongjie saw Qi Yanran appear in front of him unscathed, and immediately shouted in surprise. However, Qi Yanran did not expect to see Li Zhongjie after breaking the formation. She thought she was dreaming. Zhongjie, you're okay? In fact, Qi Yanran was burning with anxiety. She wanted to solve the fire crisis quickly, then find Li Zhongjie and rescue Li Zhongjie. After all, Li Zhongjie had been in danger for too long. The longer he stayed, the more dangerous it was. For some reason, Wan Yulan's strength had suddenly become so strong. It was difficult for Qi Yanran to be a match for her. This mysterious fire was bound to bring misery to the people. Therefore, Qi Yanran chose to solve the crisis of the flame first. But she was trapped in the Great Frost Formation for a whole day. Fortunately, She managed to kill her way out in the end. Qi Yanran was surprised to see Li Zongjiu in front of her. I know all about it. You silly girl. Your man still has the ability to protect himself. Next time don't take such a risk. Li Zongjiu was naturally very worried about Qi Yanran's safety. It was better to let Li Zongjiu face such a dangerous situation by himself. Naturally, Qi Yanran did not need to take the risk. I am worried about you. Chapter 1580. In front of the Frost Dragon and the others, Li Zongjiu and Qi Yanran were flirting in front of them in broad daylight. It was a public display of affection. They didn't even have the face to watch. The Frost Dragon had been sealed in ice for hundreds of thousands of years. Even if they fell in love under such circumstances, they still had to see the two of them flirting here. Therefore they burst out at once. Immediately, a terrifying storm of ice cones flew toward Li Zongjiu and Qi Yanran. Swoosh, swoosh. Let's get this guy down first. Swoosh, swoosh. Li Zongjiu said. Qi Yanran nodded. She just needed to listen to Li Zongjiu. She didn't need to worry about anything else. The three wardens of the dragon prison couldn't help but walk toward the distance. Previously, Li Zongjiu had already beaten the Frost Dragon into a disadvantageous position. Now another expert had arrived. Moreover, this expert was capable of splitting apart the Great Frost Array. The Frost Wyrm would not stand a chance against the two of them at the same time. Obviously for the Frost Dragon, it even felt like it was overestimating its own strength. A strong pressure came at it instantly, 1 against 2, and the two of them were not weaker than it. The Frost Wyrm could only take a beating. Qi Yanran kept releasing sword energy from her hand. The Bluebird sword directly gathered the power of the Bluebird platform. At this moment, it completely burst out, turning into rays of blue light, and blasted forward. The Frost Dragon unleashed countless frost shields. Under the situation of layers of accumulation, they wanted to resist this power. Bang! 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 When the blue light sword energy broke through the countless shields, Li Zongjiu also quickly attacked. Boom! He punched out. Berserk chaotic energy burst out from his fist and swept out in a frenzy. Rumble! One of the Frost Wyrm's teeth was instantly sent flying by the power of the chaotic force. Immediately, the Frost Dragon fell backward. Li Zongjiu and Yi Zichen instantly approached the Frost Dragon. Should we continue? Li Zongjiu and his wife had already arrived on top of the Frost Dragon's head. The Primordius Bell also hung behind him. The Frost Wyrm had already experienced the coordination between the Primordial Bell and the Bluebird Sword. Immediately, the Frost Wyrm transformed. It turned into an old man wearing a crystal white robe. Aren't you two young humans going too far? I'm an ancestor of the Dragon Clan after all. How dare you beat me up like this? Who is your master? The Frost Dragon transformed into its human form and scolded Li Zongjiu and Qi Yanran. When it saw Li Zongjiu's expression change, the Frost Dragon changed its tone. Cough cough, I am Xian Shuang. Since you have broken the Great Frost Formation, I will reluctantly accept you as my disciples. Xian Shuang wanted to save his face very much. Although he was defeated by Li Zongjiu, he still wanted to save his face. Especially when he saw that the three juniors were also watching. Seems like you still want to be beaten up? Seeing Xian Shuang's reaction, Li Zongjiu's eyes flashed with a cold light. Xian Shuang didn't want to be beaten up enough. Cough cough, young people nowadays are so violent. Xian Shuang waved his hand. He didn't want to continue. These two young people were too good at fighting. Even his old bones couldn't stand it. I'm more than 100,000 years old. It's ridiculous to fight with you young people all day long. We are all civilized people. Let's talk nicely. Qi Yanran didn't expect that this Frost Wyrm would have such an old man's character. Where did the arrogant and furious Frost Wyrm go? Now it appeared in such a way. Naturally, Qi Yanran was quite surprised. Cut the crap. Come with me and do something for me. Li Zongjiu said. Since the Frost Dragon didn't want to continue the fight, he would let him go for the time being. Obviously, it would be humiliating for the Frost Dragon. If he followed Xian Shuang's order, he would really lose face. However, he was under the pressure of Li Zongjiu and Xian Shuang's fists. It was not easy to fight against them. But he had to be careful. Well, if you want to help me, although I can't defeat you, if you want me to do it willingly, you need to show me some sincerity. Okay, we'll show you some sincerity. Watch it. Li Zhongjiu said directly. Qi Yanran naturally knew what Li Zhongjiu meant. The two of them pretended to continue the fight. Xian Shuang waved his hand. It was always Li Zhongjiu, who was the one who tricked others. So far, no one could trick Li Zhongjiu. Apparently, Xian Shuang had overestimated herself a little. He didn't expect that Li Zhongjiu would be so straightforward, and he didn't care about his face at all. However, this was also under the Frost Wyrm's persuasion. Li Zhongjiu also looked at the other party's age and gave him some face. Xian Shuang held his head high and walked to the three wardens of the Draconic Penitentiary. Which generation are you from? Xian Shuang said indifferently. At the same time, he released a stream of majesty. In front of these juniors, he had an absolute suppression. He was beaten up by Li Zhongjiu and Xian Shuang. Now he had to get back at these juniors. After all, he had been asleep for such a long time. He was beaten up as soon as he woke up. No one would be able to stand it. Greetings, ancestor. We are. The three wardens of the Draconic Penitentiary hurriedly lowered their heads and saluted. They knew that this big boss was in a bad mood, so they didn't dare to offend her. Nonsense. All right. Since I'm your ancestor, I'll check if your strength has improved. I'll see what realm you've reached. Come on. Let's see what you can do. The three wardens of the Draconic Penitentiary had never expected that the first thing Ancestor Xian Shuang would do after showing up was to vent her anger on them. The three wardens were the most difficult to deal with. They had never thought that they would end up like this. They had just been beaten up by Li Zhongjiu, and now there was another one. Wasn't he too pitiful? After a while, the three of them were also sealed in ice. They were thrown aside. Finally, Xian Shuang vented her anger on the three of them. She looked happy and full of energy. She said goodbye to Li Zhongjiu and Xian Shuang, then flew out of the Dragon Island. Since you want to put out the fire, I'll summon the rest of the ice dragons here. Now the ice dragons have been revived. Naturally, it was necessary to revitalize the power of the ice dragons. No matter what, they couldn't be as weak as they were before. They had to rise again. However, Xian Shuang came to the Dragon Island and roared. In the end, there were only 6 of them. What? The ice dragons only have this little army left? Obviously, the 6 ice dragons in front of her were miserable. They were like the hair of a bald man, pitifully few. How could they be so miserable with this little bloodline? Ancestor, we've had a hard time all these years. Enough. Let's go. Li Zhongjiu looked at the time. If he delayed any longer, the fire would definitely grow even more ferocious. If it started burning, it would definitely be extremely terrifying. If you can extinguish it earlier, then it would be best if you let me have it. Not only that, but they also had to find the one who set the fire. Li Zhongjiu would never allow these people to do whatever they wanted in his territory. The fire alone had brought danger to the Wuxia city. They had to get rid of this danger. The one who set the fire behind the scenes was the real source. Although the 6 ice dragons in front of them were pitifully few, they were at least a top force. Li Zhongjiu took these people and flew down. However, Li Zhongjiu was too fast. In just a short time they disappeared. Xian Shuang and the others naturally chased after them. They had already fought with Li Zhongjiu. Since they had agreed to help Li Zhongjiu, Xian Shuang would do it. Otherwise, the world was only so big. Where could they escape to? One day, Li Zhongjiu would find them. At that time, no one would be happy about it. Since their cultivation had reached this level, there was nothing to hide. If you help me today, you might have to beg me to help you tomorrow. As long as there was no deep hatred, they would get along peacefully. After all, it was lonely at the top. Otherwise, it would be too lonely to be alone in this world. The Frost Dragon understood this very well. He didn't have much lifespan left. It was fate that he could be awakened by Li Zhongjiu at this time. In the future, Dragon Island might need Li Zhongjiu and his wife to take care of it. The fire in the Blackwater Forest was spreading. It had even reached less than 50 miles away from the Wuxia city. Under such circumstances, just the blazing fire in front of them The flying boat in front of them was already in a state of high temperature. It would burn at any time. We can't hold it anymore. We have to evacuate. If it goes on like this, the origin energy thruster will explode, Nangong Wuji said. Chapter 1581. Of course, the origin energy thruster in his hand had been modified and could withstand high temperature. However, the external temperature and the internal temperature could easily cause damage to the origin energy thruster. In this way, it would be very dangerous. If one or two of them exploded, it wouldn't matter. However, if there were a series of explosions, the Wuxia city would fall from the sky. Once it fell, more than 90% of the people in the Wuxia city would die. Therefore, they had to leave as soon as possible while they still had enough energy to move. Okay, let's retreat 100 miles first, Li Tianqing said. There was no other way now. After all, the speed of the flames was too fast. Now the entire sky had turned crimson red. When they looked at the sky, they felt like they were in hell. Even the people in the city began to panic. They were like pigs placed at the edge of a volcano. If they were pushed down, they would become roasted suckling pigs. Therefore, they had to leave as soon as possible. Fortunately, the Wuxia city had completed the plan of the Sky City. Otherwise, it would be quite troublesome to move such a big city, even if this person could be moved away. However, it was impossible to move the city. Most likely, they would be incinerated completely, and their memories of the past would no longer exist. Nangong Wuji nodded in agreement. Considering the lifespan and usage of the origin energy thruster, they had to move it in advance. If it exploded, the 50,000 origin energy thrusters would be equivalent to 50,000 bombs. It would directly blow up the Wuxia city. Nothing would be left. However, just as Nangong Wuji and his people were about to modify the origin energy thruster, in other words, by adding a force in the opposite direction on the opposite wall, it would be able to propel the city into flight. However, before they had time to do it, then, he saw a figure appear on the horizon. Huo Wushuang was originally on the city wall, observing the situation. If the situation worsened, she would take action in time to stabilize the situation. Suddenly a voice appeared. It surprised Huo Wushuang. Li Zongjiu is back, Huo Wushuang said. Her tone was quite calm. At least, there was no fluctuation in her voice. Where is he? Qing Shilong didn't see it either. When they saw it, Li Zongjiu and Qi Yinran were already on the city wall. Wushuang, yours? Why did your hair change color? Qi Yinran saw that the color of Wushuang's hair had turned into ice blue, which made her look even colder. Because of the heart of the Jade Sea, Huo Wushuang also displayed the unparalleled sword, the heart of the Azure Sea. What a beautiful gem! When Qi Yinran saw the heart of the Jade Sea, she couldn't take her eyes off it. After all, the gem was too beautiful. I think so too. I've never seen such a beautiful gem. The two women then began to discuss the stone. Isn't this the dojo master? Nangong Wuji shouted. Now that Li Zongjiu's strength and status were different, even though he didn't mind it for a long time, it wouldn't be good for him to continue addressing someone else by name. Even Nangong Wuji couldn't bear the consequences. Therefore, he addressed Nangong Wuji as the dojo master. After all, Li Zongjiu was the owner of the White Deer Mansion. Although they rarely showed up, it was very real. No one could shake Li Zongjiu's position. Nangong, you're here too. There's no need to move. Let's put out the fire today, Li Zongjiu said. Go and call my father and the others here, Li Zongjiu said to a city guard next to him. Even though they were in such a scorching hot environment, they were still wearing their heavy armor. The ice cubes next to them would soon turn into a pile of boiling water. After a while, Li Tianqing and the others arrived. After all, they were always paying attention to this kind of thing. Originally, if the city was to be moved, it should be in a safe place. As a supreme being, Li Tianqing didn't care so much. He just happened to see Li Zongjiu coming. When he saw that Li Zongjiu and Qi Yinran were both safe and sound, Li Tianqing was very happy. No matter when, as long as the family was happy together, it was naturally the best result. Moreover, these two little ones were so capable. Even this pair was praised and spread by many people. They were called good examples to learn from. Naturally, It made people very envious. Sister Yanran. Wan Yulan also appeared and greeted Qi Yanran when she saw her. On the way, Li Zhongjiu also told Qi Yanran what happened before. Qi Yanran was not a petty person. Moreover, this was not Wan Yulan's fault. It was the mysterious black soul expert who took control of Wan Yulan's body. You've recovered too. That's great. You don't have to take the previous fight to heart. Qi Yanran said. Wan Yulan also nodded desperately. After all, if this happened to anyone, they would feel guilty. Now that everyone was fine, this was the best result. Several people exchanged greetings. Lu Yao was also watching from afar, but she didn't go forward. Now Li Zhongjiu was accompanied by so many beauties. It was meaningless for her to go forward. As long as Li Zhongjiu still remembered her as a friend, it was enough. So now, naturally, she wouldn't go forward to participate in anything. Did you really bring the Frost Wyrm here? Qing Shilong was also a member of Dragon Island. Later on, he pledged his allegiance to Li Zhongjiu. Unexpectedly, this was also a rather fortunate thing. With this opportunity, Qing Shilong was now living a carefree life. Every day he ate, drank, slept, and went wherever he wanted to play. Li Zhongjiu didn't have time to care about him. The rest of the people also looked at Li Zhongjiu. Obviously, they wanted to know whether this matter was successful or not. However, they also thought about it. In this world, there seemed to be nothing that Li Zhongjiu couldn't do. Even Li Zhongjiu didn't need to answer them. Suddenly, a gust of cold air burst out from the horizon. They didn't even see the person who flew over, but they already felt the cold air of the other party approaching. Boom! The frost dragon's body stretched for 100,000 miles. It proudly displayed itself in front of everyone. His attitude caused everyone to be shocked. Even from afar, he was the first to feel a cooling sensation. Even Wuxia City hadn't felt such a cool and refreshing feeling for a long time. That is really the legendary frost dragon. The world only knew that there was a very powerful frost dragon on this dragon island. However, in Qing Shilong's memory, even on this dragon island, this frost dragon was a legendary existence. None of the dragons had ever truly seen this frost dragon, because this was an existence of the same level as the ancestor who built this dragon island. Therefore, when Qing Shilong saw the appearance of the frost dragon, he wanted to kneel. He even wanted to kneel down. This was simply a miracle. To think that he would have the fortune of 3 lifetimes to see this legendary frost Wyrm. When the frost dragon arrived, he already knew what Li Zhongjiu wanted him to do. He was a dignified frost dragon, but Li Zhongjiu actually treated him as a tool to extinguish fire. This was really too embarrassing. However, on account of the fact that this was to save the people of the world, he let go of this matter in his heart and directly let go of his position. The main thing was that if he didn't go, he was worried that Li Zhongjiu would beat him up. Chapter 1582. The frost dragon's huge body directly spread its wings, spraying cold air around the flames. In fact, this was equivalent to a dragon's breath. Under the dragon's breath, it was not an exaggeration to be able to create thousands of miles of ice. Moreover, the frost dragon's breath was very effective. It directly extinguished the flames below. It actually directly froze the flames. If it were anyone else, they would not be able to block it. Such ferocious and powerful flames were finally extinguished by the Ice Blast Wyrm today. And the frost dragon's dragon breath came down. It directly extinguished the flames within dozens of miles. The effect was extremely significant. After Li Tianqing and the others saw it, they all felt a very exciting feeling. It was really shocking. Sure enough, they still had to find the right medicine for the illness. With the frost dragon's breath, it was enough to make up for all the efforts they had put in these days. Boom! The frost condensed. Everyone was also dumbfounded. They looked at the spectacular scene of the flames being extinguished in front of them in amazement. It's too powerful. Lu Yao could not help but say. After all, they had experienced the power of the flames before, and knew the power of the flames. At this moment, the mighty power of the Ice Blast Wyrm had left a deep impression in their hearts. Yes, it's really awesome. Look, there are a few little dragons over there. The little dragons that they were talking about. They were all bona fide ice-type dragons. Although their strength was not as powerful as the frost dragon ancestor. But behind them, the 6 dragons working together were also able to extinguish some of the flames. After all, there would always be something that they missed. Everyone's eyes were filled with surprise. However, Li Zhongjio's eyes became serious at this moment. Because at this moment, Li Zhongjio could also feel that in the center of the flames, there was a power awakening. He looked at Qi Yinran. Obviously, Qi Yinran also sensed the existence of the other party. Let's go. Li Zhongjio and Qi Yinran rushed in the direction of the center. The unparalleled sword naturally followed. As for the others, they naturally stayed in the city to observe the situation. This matter was not necessarily easy. For the time being, they did not know the strength of their opponents. If they really fought, they would most likely be at a disadvantage. Li Zhongjio could feel the strength of his opponent. The Frost Wirem also sensed it. Xian Shuang could feel that a power was waking up. The surrounding flames were also released by this power. Moreover, the other party had only casually released a little of it, and it had already brewed such a tragic scene of a volcano. If he truly awakened, what kind of terrifying power would he possess? Therefore, after circling the area a few times, the frost dragons finally stopped. He stopped in his tracks. His eyes were fixed ahead. At this moment, in the heart of the Blackwater Forest, there seemed to be an area of fire with a radius of about 20 miles. In this environment, the power of the fire seemed to be stronger than the fire he had extinguished before. Nothing could be seen except for the endless flames. It was like a fireball that was half buried under the ground. Just the half-exposed surface of the ground had already formed a rather terrifying power. You all retreat. Xian Shuang could feel the power of the other party, so he immediately ordered the frost dragons to retreat. If they fought later, they might be at a disadvantage. These little guys were not strong enough to withstand many attacks. At this moment, Li Zhongjio and Qi Yinran had also arrived. What's going on? Li Zhongjio asked. Xian Shuang also transformed into a human. I should ask you, what's going on? I guess the person down there is not easy to deal with. Xian Shuang also frowned. Obviously, the person down there was very powerful. If they fought with him, they would obviously be at a disadvantage. What era was this? Was it the dance of gods and demons? For Xian Shuang, it was quite troublesome. She had just woken up and had slept for more than 100,000 years. Now she was in the world after 100,000 years. Shouldn't she be at the top? Did they exist? Why did she encounter threats one after another? They were all very terrifying. This made the frost dragons speechless. They are from the upper world, Qi Yinran said. She then repeated what Wang Jing had told her before. Since they were both at the same level, she only needed to give a few pointers to understand the cause and effect of the incident. When Xian Shuang heard that they were from the upper world, her face instantly turned pale. Apparently she couldn't believe it. What? They are from the upper world? Xian Shuang repeated. What's the big deal? I have already caught one. Li Zhongjio said indifferently. Apparently, that mysterious black soul had also escaped from the upper world. Of course, Li Zhongjio would take action and deal with those who were causing trouble down there. If Li Zhongjio hadn't been lucky, it would have been Li Zhongjio who had been killed. Li Zhongjio also clearly felt that the person under the fireball was more powerful than the mysterious black soul. Don't touch him first. Li Zhongjio? He didn't take action directly, because he was still a little bit scared. Mainly, if the other party was also at the primordial realm, after the fight, the movement would definitely be earth-shattering. Not to mention the Blackwater Forest. It was difficult to find a complete stone within a radius of 10,000 miles. Therefore, if Li Zhongjio wanted to fight with the other party, he had to at least move Wuxia city away first. Since the other party was under the protection of the fireball, it meant that the other party was recovering and needed time. Therefore, Li Zhongjio could take advantage of this time to find out the background of the mysterious black soul. In addition, he had to set up a formation. It would be a hindrance to the other party. In this way, at least he would be prepared and wouldn't let the other party be too arrogant. More or less, he could be prepared. Therefore, Li Zongjie retreated temporarily. He didn't fight with the other party down there. Instead, he went back to make some arrangements. At least the other party had already felt the icy power outside, so he was quickly withdrawing the power he had released. In the end, it directly formed the range of 20 miles. He had to move Wuxia city away. I think so too. We should find some helpers quickly. Otherwise, this guy will be very difficult to deal with. Xian Shuang said based on her intuition. If they really fought, she really didn't have the confidence. It was better to stabilize first. Qi Yanran naturally listened to Li Zongjie. The three of them directly returned to the city wall of Wuxia city. When everyone saw the white-robed old man in front of them, their eyes lit up. When Li Zongjie and Xian Shuang went out, they didn't see the old man. Now the old man appeared, and the frost dragon also disappeared. Didn't this prove the old man's identity? This is the frost dragon just now. What's your name? Li Zongjie turned around and asked. I'm Xian Shuang. You can call me Lord Xian Shuang. He didn't know where Xian Shuang was so thick-skinned. She was really thick-skinned enough to ask others to call her Lord. At this moment, the 6 frost dragons had also turned into humans and landed on the city wall. Right behind ancestor Xian Shuang, Li Tianqing, and the others naturally had to thank Xian Shuang. If it weren't for Xian Shuang, not only Wuxia city, but also the surrounding cities would have been finished. If the fire burned directly, who knew how many people would have died, and how many people wouldn't have been able to escape in time? In fact, this flame would probably cause a huge loss to the city. Li Tianqing and the others cupped their hands to Xian Shuang. Lord Xian Shuang, thank you for your help. At this moment, Xian Shuang also felt that his face was full of glory. The ice dragons behind her all looked over. They were quite envious of Xian Shuang, who was so proud of her. Xian Shuang? Are you Xian Shuang, one of the top 10 experts of the Dragon Clan from hundreds of thousands of years ago? The great elder of Sparrow God Palace couldn't help but ask. He didn't expect that this expert from hundreds of thousands of years ago could still be alive. Of course, this was also because of his special attribute. After all, he was of the ice attribute. As long as he could enter the frozen state, he could preserve his vitality for a long time. That was why he was able to preserve his life until now. When the surrounding people heard that he was in existence from hundreds of thousands of years ago, they all opened their eyes wide and looked at Xian Shuang in disbelief. Xian Shuang waved his hand casually. It's just a false reputation. Back then, I was only ranked 3rd in the Dragon Clan. It's not worth mentioning. Over the past hundreds of thousands of years, my cultivation has deteriorated a lot. Li Zongjie had never seen a dragon so good at bragging. Would this guy die if he didn't brag? Or was it because he was about to die, so he had to continue bragging? Chapter 1583. Hearing Xian Shuang's words, the others were naturally amazed. Even Li Tianqing was like a curious baby. He wanted to see what kind of world it was hundreds of thousands of years ago from Xian Shuang's body. If it weren't for the lack of time, he would really want to stay and have a good chat. You are from the Heavenly Sparrow clan, right? Back then, your peacock ancestor was also very powerful. His strength was not inferior to mine. Xian Shuang looked at the elders of the Sparrow Divine Palace and said, when Qi Yanran used the bluebird sword, he already knew her identity. The other party's strength was indeed that strong. However, Xian Shuang was indeed bragging. Back then, the peacock ancestor could beat 10 of him without a problem. It just so happened that the peacock ancestor was already dead for more than 100,000 years. Anyway, it was certain that no one would be able to expose this bullshit, unless someone could go back hundreds of thousands of years and verify the peacock ancestor's bragging. That's not right. My inheritance told me that the peacock ancestor once fought against the top 10 experts of the Dragon Clan alone. He wasn't at a disadvantage. Qi Yanran stood out and said, how could she let Xian Shuang slander this kind of thing? After all, Qi Yanran had also received the inheritance of the peacock great immortal. The records in the Bluebird platform were quite rich. At least Qi Yanran was also a member of the Sparrow Divine Palace. Of course, she had to clear the name of the Sparrow Divine Palace. Ahem, That was from the previous batch. I was one of the top 10 experts of the second batch. Qian Shuang's old face turned red. Then, he casually said a few words in an attempt to gloss over this matter. At this moment, Li Zhongjiu also stood out and interrupted the idle chatter. Father, the fireball in the Blackwater Forest came from an expert. We don't know whether he is an enemy or a friend. Let's move Wuxia City first. After hearing this, Li Tianqing also remembered. By the way, there was this information 2 days ago. Take a good look. Li Tianqing handed Li Zhongjiu a shadow recording stone. This stone could record light and shadow, as well as some images and information. Li Zhongjiu opened the shadow recording stone. This scene came from Binhai City. What was displayed was the scene of a black sea and a fireball clashing against each other. Anyone who saw this scene would feel very puzzled, because there wasn't even a single person in sight. However, Li Zhongjiu could tell at a glance. The person who had attacked was the Black Sea Overlord. The other person was the owner of the fireball in front of him. Although neither of them had revealed their true bodies, it was clear that the Black Sea Overlord was stronger than the Black Sea Overlord. Yet he was unable to kill the Black Sea Overlord. As for whether this guy was injured or not, the situation was unclear. Li Zhongjiu immediately frowned. After reading it, Li Zhongjiu's expression became a little more solemn. If that's the case, this fireball is an enemy. Li Zhongjiu said. The Black Sea Overlord? Qi Yanran also knew about the Black Sea Overlord. Even Huo Wushuang had appeared just now. It's indeed the power of the Black Sea Overlord. After this fireball appeared, it had killed many disciples of the Sky Sect Academy. This was enough to sentence it to death. With Li Zhongjiu here, it would have no way to survive. I have to kill you. Although I didn't see it clearly, no matter how I look at it, this is too strong. Qian Shuang couldn't help but say. Even an existence like Qian Shuang was afraid. It was obvious that its strength was at least at innate level 9. However, in Li Zhongjiu's opinion, to be able to escape from the Black Sea Overlord, it had to be at least at the Celestial Realm. Even if it wasn't at the Celestial Realm, it had to be an innate realm expert with certain means. So serious? Li Tianqing also frowned and looked at Li Zhongjiu. It's quite serious. Li Zhongjiu said. Even the fearless evil lord said that this matter was very serious. Then it must be very serious. Quick, let's move. Let's move Wuxia City directly. Where should we move to? According to the previous plan, we'll move to somewhere near the Sacred Flame Royal City. This way, it'll be convenient for us to take care of each other. As long as the city was there, it didn't matter where they went. Moreover, the flying boat industry was gradually developing. Going anywhere was also a very simple matter. As long as you had enough money, if they were to move to the Sacred Flame Royal City, it would obviously be a huge change. For Wuxia City, it was equivalent to upgrading. If one wanted to do high-class business, he had to leave his name in Wuxia City first. That's a good idea, Li Zhongjiu said. Wan Yulan also witnessed this miraculous scene. The huge city actually flew directly into the sky, and then slowly flew in the direction of the Sacred Flame Royal City. His speed also gradually increased. In the vicinity of Wuxia City, countless powerful warships could be seen flying. They were escorting Wuxia City. What's so good about this divine artifact? Our Dragon Island is many times bigger than this. Qian Shuang couldn't help but say. Obviously, in Qian Shuang's mind, Dragon Island was more powerful. She didn't see the other people's surprised eyes. However, she didn't know that Dragon Island was also a magical treasure. The city in front of them was built with this kind of advanced technology. The gap between them wasn't that simple. Of course, as a magical treasure, Dragon Island had such great power, which naturally made people envious. Wan Yulan also followed the flying Wuxia City. After all, it was her first long-distance flight. It was indeed very difficult to fly with such a huge city. Nangong Wuji and the others were also very nervous. Along the way, they were constantly observing the situation. The process was naturally very long. Even some of the commoners ran to the edge of the city wall to watch this historical scene. Under the city wall, there was a large open space. After all, it directly raised half of the mountain. Therefore, It was already very good that they couldn't fly in such a situation. The risk wasn't high, but if you fell from the city wall, you would fall to your death. Moreover, in this high altitude, you would often encounter some chaotic airflow. The Sky Blaze Lion King and other experts were also escorting him. Therefore, the danger was actually quite small. After all, there were so many experts. Just counting the Supreme Being experts, there were no less than 10. The Sky Blaze Lion, Li Tianqing and his wife, the 3 elders of the Sparrow God Palace, Qing Shilong, Wan Yulan and the others. No wonder Wuxia City became the king of thousands of cities. It was because of its powerful strength. Even the imperial family of the Shengyan dynasty didn't necessarily have so many experts. If there was still a problem under the supervision of so many experts, Wuxia City could be considered unlucky. They watched Wuxia City leave. With the cultivation of Li Tianqing and his wife, it was naturally not a problem. After all, the cultivation of the Supreme Being realm wasn't just for show. It was real. Li Zhongjiu, Qi Yanran, and Huo Wushuang were also preparing to work together to set up a formation. They also needed Xian Shuang to observe the situation of the flame. If the flame suddenly broke out, of course, they needed someone to appear in time to put out the fire. Xian Shuang was also willing to help. After all, they were all on the same continent. So, they couldn't escape. If they didn't help now, at that time, the person in the flame would appear. Li Zhongjiu and the others wouldn't let Xian Shuang go. We are all in the same boat, and unless we can't settle this matter in the end, it's all right for us to go our separate ways. What formation? Qi Yanran asked. These 3 could be said to be the most powerful formation masters on the whole continent. It was impossible to find another one who was more powerful than them. It's best to use a water formation to deal with fire, but it's safer to use an earth formation to form a reverse state with water. Huo Wushuang said. After all, Huo Wushuang himself was of the fire attribute and had cultivated the fire attribute for so many years. Huo Wushuang also knew that to deal with water, there was a certain bottom line between them. But for an earth formation, unless the flames were many times stronger, it was basically impossible to do so. It could only be used to escape. It was also the most difficult formation to deal with. I have a formation here, the Black Tortoise Heavenly Tribulation Formation. Li Zhongjiu said at this moment. The origin of this formation was also found in the process of treasure hunting in his previous life. It should be from the tomb of Saint Martial Emperor. The reason why Li Zhongjiu didn't search for treasures crazily in this life was that he didn't need to search for treasures to improve his strength quickly. And the treasures in his previous life were basically in Li Zhongjiu's mind. There was no need to go through so much trouble. The Black Tortoise Heavenly Tribulation Formation. Chapter 1584. The Black Tortoise was of the water attribute. However, it also had the earth attribute, which made it an expert of the land. Furthermore, Li Zhongjiu had also analyzed the Black Tortoise Sky Tribulation Array in his hands. This array formation was more than enough to deal with fire-based attacks. In addition, the array itself was very powerful. If it was used, it would definitely be able to keep this guy in check. Li Zhongjiu shared the array with Qi Yanran and Huo Wushuang. After the 2 of them studied it for a while, they both understood that this formation was indeed very powerful. This array is so powerful that even if the 3 of us join forces, we may not be able to break it. Huo Wushuang thought about it for a while. She immediately said, indeed, this array was very powerful. However, it would take a lot of energy to set it up. Do you need my help? Xian Shuang asked from the side. You also know how to set up arrays? Li Zhongjiu looked at Xian Shuang and asked. Obviously, he was very curious. It seemed that this old guy was quite useful. Even though he was a person from hundreds of thousands of years ago, he was not out of touch with the current era. Haha, I'm not that talented. The frost array that this lady broke through was just set up by me hundreds of thousands of years ago. Xian Shuang said. Although he said that he was not that talented, his eyes were shining like stars. It seemed that he should be shining at this moment. That frost array is just SOSO. Qi Yanran said mercilessly. After all, the great frost array didn't last long in her hands before it was completely flattened. After all, Qi Yinran also wanted to break the array. After a little research, she directly solved it. Cough cough. No matter what, I'm still a 12th level array master. Xian Shuang said indifferently. Li Zhongjiu and the others could not believe it. They did not expect the person in front of them to have such a powerful background. You even sent a level 12 array master. Look at how awesome you are. Why don't you just go to heaven? Obviously, Li Zhongjiu did not expect the latter to have such an ability. However, Xian Shuang had a high awareness. At the very least, he knew everything. If they can't stop this flaming monster, then even the Dragon Island will cease to exist. They won't be able to resist this kind of threat. So basically, everyone was in the same boat. If this huge wave were to hit them, if everyone did not work together, it would be difficult for them to resist it. At this moment, even if you jump into the sea, it will be useless. No one can save you. The 4 formation masters worked together to set up this formation, guarding the 4 corners of the north, south, east, and west. After studying the materials in his hands for a while, the few of them got the hang of it very quickly. Then he began to set up the array. Fortunately, the Blackwater Overlord had injured this person before this, which gave Li Zhongjiu and the others so much time. If this guy had rushed out directly, it might have caused a very dangerous situation. Just with this ability, it would be enough to make people collapse if he went around setting fire. Perhaps something had happened to him. The whole continent would be plunged into an endless sea of fire. By then, the flames that could be seen everywhere would really not be something that a mere ice blast WIRM could deal with. During this period of time, Li Zhongjiu and the others had enough time to prepare. At this moment, the people in the fire certainly sensed the people who were setting up the formation outside. Of course, such a small movement could not be hidden from them. After sensing for a while, they sneered disdainfully. If you were an elephant, would you care about a trap set up by 5 ants around you? Therefore, the experts in the fire only cared about healing their injuries. At the same time, they did not dare to expose their aura. Once they were exposed, the previous expert might come to kill them. Therefore, the current situation was only temporary. First, he had to stabilize his injuries and improve his strength. If he accidentally lured that expert over again, he would probably be done for. No one would have thought that the world below was so small. It was really shocking. A group of lowly ants. How dare you touch the ground in front of me? The expert in the fire sneered. The formation set up by the other party was just a child's play in his eyes. Now he also needed time to heal his injuries. As for the thousands of miles of fire, if that was the case, it really had nothing to do with him. He didn't have the mood to care so much. He had to find an opportunity to burn down the entire forest. It was just the flames that came with it. Who knew that the things in the lower realm would be so fragile? With just a little bit of fire, such a situation had occurred. It had nothing to do with him. It was because they were too weak. Both sides were also fighting for time. At the eye of the formation, Li Zhongjiu used the primordial bell to hold the formation. As long as the power of the primordial bell could be stabilized, only the strength of the primordial bell could be so strong that it could support the formation. Even if it was injured, it could still maintain a strong power. It was also filled with the power of primordial chaos. 15 days later, the embryonic form of the formation was completed. It was indeed not easy for these 4 array masters to work together to settle this matter. This showed how strong the formation was. It was suffocating. At this moment, there was a stream of primordial qi in the sky above the Blackwater forest. It looked like a yellow tortoise shell. The sky was filled with the patterns on the turtle shell, and they looked very clear. The patterns were projected and intertwined in the sky. It almost formed a thunderous power. Seeing this, everyone was quite shocked. I kind of want to try the power of this formation. When Xian Shuang saw the black tortoise heavenly tribulation formation, she felt a little itchy. Li Zhongjiu glanced at Xian Shuang. The old man's eyes were full of fighting spirit. Obviously, he must have been a warmonger when he was young. However, as time went by, the energy in his body became less and less. He was getting weaker and weaker with each passing day. How many more years can you live in this state? Li Zhongjiu looked at Xian Shuang in front of him and said, However, when Qian Shuang heard Li Zhongjio's words, her heart skipped a beat. Children don't need to know about adult matters. Chapter 1585. If it were someone else, they wouldn't have the right to say that. However, even if Li Zhongjio had 3,000 years of life experience in his previous life, it would still be insufficient in front of this old dragon from hundreds of thousands of years ago. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to call him a child. However, Li Zhongjio was good at alchemy. Although he tried to hide it, Li Zhongjio could see through him. Your strength is less than 1/10 of your peak. You should have been in the celestial being realm when you were at your peak. I was in the heavenly dragon realm, but it's all in the past. Qian Shuang stood with her hands behind her back. She looked at the sky with melancholy in her eyes. Her heart was full of sadness and vicissitudes. It seemed that it was not a person in front of her, but a stone that had experienced thousands of years of vicissitudes. It was full of stories. At most, I don't think you have more than half a year left, Li Zhongjio said. Hearing that, Qian Shuang's eyes dimmed. You have a good eye. Qian Shuang sighed. Although the dragon tribe had a long lifespan, Qian Shuang's vital essence had been exhausted after being frozen for hundreds of thousands of years. Even her cultivation in the heavenly dragon realm had been reduced to level 6 of the nascent realm. After fighting with Li Zhongjio, she knew that she was no match for this young man. So she didn't want to continue fighting with him. Just thinking about it. Just stop it. At the same time, she tried her best to help Li Zhongjio, because she saw Li Zhongjio's potential and hope. If Li Zhongjio could help, Dragon Island would at least have some protection. As a member of the dragon tribe, she certainly didn't want Dragon Island to be destroyed. She wanted to establish a good relationship with Li Zhongjio. At least, Li Zhongjio was quite powerful and had a good character. Since he had reached such a realm, he was either a bad person or a weirdo. Good people usually didn't survive. Through observation, it was clear that Li Zhongjio was not a bad person, but a strange person. His nickname was Evil Lord, so he was an evil person. It was filled with evil energy. I can save you, Li Zhongjio said calmly. So what if he was an expert from hundreds of thousands of years ago? So what if he knew everything? You don't even know how to refine pills. The vitality that the pills could bring to people wasn't what they imagined. It's so simple that it's far beyond your imagination. This matter wasn't as simple as it seemed. The true meaning of the Great Path was also contained within the elixir. If he could comprehend it thoroughly, it wasn't difficult to revive someone from the dead. Regaining one's youth was even easier. Coincidentally, in his previous life, Li Zhongjio's alchemy cultivation was also at this level. It was a sunny day. However, Qian Shuang felt that a bolt of lightning was striking down from the top of her head. If he heard correctly, this was Li Zhongjio. What did you say? Qian Shuang heard it clearly, but after carefully analyzing the content, she couldn't stay calm. She even thought that she was hallucinating. A level 6 expert hallucinating? This is the Heaven Recovery Pill. Your cultivation is too strong, so this Heaven Recovery Pill can give you 2 more years at most. Li Zhongjio gave the Heaven Recovery Pill to Qian Shuang. It was a grade 10 pill. When the effect of the foundation had reached the extreme, Li Zhongjio naturally liked to do some research and explore other areas to open up his own cultivation path. Longevity. It was the ultimate goal that many people pursued. No matter what, they all wanted to live on, and to live forever. Even though it wasn't too difficult for a supreme being to live up to 3,000 years old, it wasn't too difficult. However, by that time they would be old. They couldn't be like young people anymore. However, Li Zhongjio was more than 3,000 years old, but his vitality was so strong that it made people feel that he was only 30 years old. That was the real power. It was because of this that Li Zhongjio was called the Evil Dominator and was in an undefeatable position. Otherwise, just take a look at the martial master of the Saint Flame Dynasty's imperial family. He was only 200 years old, but he already looked so old. It was obvious that Li Zhongjio was the evil lord. Just how strange was this? Heaven Recovery Pill. Oh my god. I don't even need to eat it. The vitality in it. You are an alchemist? Qian Shuang was also shocked. Even in the antiquity times, No one could make a pill that could restore vitality. Not to mention now these people were not as strong as they used to be. Their overall level was very low. Therefore, Qian Shuang couldn't imagine that she could meet such an alchemist. Haven't you heard of my name, Evil Lord? Of course, you can call me the god of alchemy, but I don't think it sounds good. I'm just the best alchemist in the world. You don't have to call me a god. That's so tacky. When it came to acting tough, Li Zongjie was definitely an expert. There were very few people who could compete with him. Qian Shuang had thought that with her thick skin, after cultivating for more than 100,000 years, she would be invincible. However, after meeting Li Zongjie, she realized that talent was also important. Li Zongjie's confident temperament, which emanated from within him, was something that outsiders would have a hard time seeing through. With just a glance, they could more or less figure it out. At least they knew that the man in front of them was truly invincible. It didn't matter to those with thick skin. As long as the pill in her hand was effective, it was fine. You're awesome. You can say whatever you want. Qian Shuang swallowed the heaven recovery pill in her hand without hesitation. Instantly, the pill in her hand turned into a flow of pure energy. It got into Qian Shuang's body. Qian Shuang refined the power. She didn't even need to refine it. The power entered her body and healed her deteriorating organs one by one. Oh my god! This pill is so effective. It's so awesome. Qian Shuang opened her eyes wide. She gave Li Zongjie a thumbs up. Just do your job. You can only live for 2 more years. If you can't kill that guy, all of us can only live for half a year at most. Li Zongjie said indifferently. The formation started to absorb energy automatically. Now there was one more thing they needed to do. That was to properly interrogate the expert who was stuck on the tombstone. Chapter 1586. For safety's sake, the few of them decided to interrogate the ladder within the primordial bell. After all, they weren't sure what kind of means the ladder had. If they were to make any noise, this guy might be able to escape, but it was unlikely. This was because Li Zongjie had been monitoring the ladder all this time. As long as it was slightly repaired, Li Zongjie would turn his chaotic power into a long whip and whip it back and forth on the tombstone. In this way, he would exhaust his vitality. Inside the chaotic origin bell, the 4 of them showed up at the same time. They surrounded the tombstone in front of them. The mysterious black soul in the tombstone obviously sensed the appearance of Li Zongjie and the others. He immediately panicked. How could so many experts suddenly appear? He had seen Li Zongjie and Qi Yanran before, but he had never seen Hou Wushuang and Qian Shuang. With regards to the sudden appearance of these 2 experts, his heart also raised a bit of vigilance, especially the old man's strength, which was almost the same as Li Zongjie's. Just the 2 of them together was enough to make the black soul feel troubled. Sure enough, he had thought that there would be experts in the mortal world, but he didn't expect there to be so many. Supremes and Supremes could be killed with ease, but they could be easily eliminated. There was no pressure at all. However, once they reached the innate level, it would be difficult to compete with them in terms of strength. 1 or 2 of Qi Yanran's level was okay. He could withstand 2 moves. But if he reached the level of Li Zongjie and the white-haired old man, he would not be able to withstand it. Now the 4 of them showed up. It was obvious that they wanted to cause trouble. This made him very vigilant. What the hell? Why don't we just break the tombstone? Qian Shuang said. Sure. I think this guy doesn't want to show up. Zhao Kaishan took out the 10,000 dragon hammer. The black hammer was full of explosive power. Once released, it would be fierce. Qian Shuang also had a treasured saber with cold air. Under normal circumstances, Qian Shuang did not need a weapon. However, this kind of formation required it. Hence, he also found a cold iron saber. He was prepared to hack the tombstone in front of him to death. Immediately, Qian Shuang moved as well. He even gestured in front of the tombstone. The powerful bluebird sword appeared in Qi Yanran's hand. Hou Wushuang naturally used the peerless sword. But this time, the power of the peerless sword was clearly enough to make the latter wary. The power of ice and fire gathered on it. If it exploded, the power it displayed would be very strong. In Qian Shuang's eyes, the matchless sword was already very strong. However, for the time being, he did not have the ability to unleash the full might of the unparalleled sword. Even Li Zongjie was unable to display the full power of the peerless sword. The current peerless sword was too strong. It was truly shocking. Alright, what do you want? Can you give me a way out? The soul of the tombstone finally could not bear the pressure anymore. He could not bear the fact that he was about to be smashed into pieces. If I were in my prime, I would not allow you to be so presumptuous here, the soul of the tombstone said. Initially, he thought that he could at least live a carefree life in this lower realm. However, he was targeted by Li Zongjie and the others the moment he arrived. In the end, he ended up in such a state. This made him quite surprised. It had completely disrupted his plan. The soul of the tombstone was in a dilemma. What should he do? Now that he saw the four of them, he realized something was wrong. With their strength, none of them were easy to deal with. The soul of the tombstone could not bear the pressure and spoke. However, Li Zongjie and the others still acted according to the original plan. They directly attacked and smashed the tombstone, even though the tombstone was indestructible. However, Li Zongjie and the others still smashed it with all their strength. It was quite exciting. Naturally, the tombstone could not withstand such an attack. When the soul of the tombstone floated in the air and lost its only resistance, it was like a naked girl in front of everyone. No, you bunch of beasts, you actually destroyed my hiding place. The black soul suddenly roared in pain. It was really unable to accept such a blow. Cut the crap. Tell me your background. What exactly is the situation? Why did you come to the lower realms? If there is even a single sentence that I don't like to hear, and I suspect you, I alone will not be able to completely eliminate you. But how long can you last with the four of us working together? Li Zongjie sneered. Although the black soul was obviously very unhappy, however, it was a matter of life and death now. The other party was an expert from the lower world. Those who could cultivate to such a level were basically not easy to deal with. Therefore, after thinking about it for a while, it was clear that admitting defeat was the only way out. Otherwise, he would really be killed. If you want to ask questions, just ask questions. Why did you break my tombstone? The black soul muttered. Then the black soul began to transform as well. Sigh, how should I put this? It's like this. Actually, you guys are in big trouble. The black soul said indifferently. I'm a tombstone in the Xiantian mausoleum. You may not know the Xiantian emperor, but in the heaven realm, the Xiantian emperor is a real top expert. There are countless treasures and secret books in the Xiantian emperor's mausoleum and 5 macro worlds. Of course, this has nothing to do with you, the black soul said. Then, he saw that Li Zongjie seemed to be ready to attack, so he immediately waved his hand. Young man, don't be impulsive. As for why I came to the lower world, actually, I'm also very confused. Because suddenly there was a hole next to me, and then I was sucked down. If it weren't for my power, which was weakened in the process of traversing, not to mention the 4 of you, even if there were 40 more of you, you wouldn't be able to defeat me. Hearing this, Xian Shuang's face was full of surprise. You're saying that you're actually a tombstone spirit? Tombstone spirit? This was indeed a very vivid description. Bah, you're the tombstone spirit. I'm the Xiantian emperor, the way of the heavenly mausoleum, formed by the power of life and death. I'm the incarnation of the great way. What do you know? When he heard that he was called a tombstone spirit, he felt a great sense of humiliation. You're also a tombstone spirit that can talk. Li Zongjie said affirmatively. Chapter 1587. No matter what this guy was, Li Zongjie and the others would not let their guard down. It was really shocking that a tombstone of the mysterious Heaven Great Emperor could reach such a state. If this was the mysterious Heaven Great Emperor himself, how terrifying would he be? Who's that guy outside? Li Zongjie finally asked the important question and pointed outside. At the same time, Li Zongjie also controlled the chaotic bell to show the situation outside. Hence, the tombstone spirit saw a fireball in front of him. Oh my god, how could it be him? Why is he here? You're all dead. Hurry up and leave this world. The tombstone spirit seemed to be very agitated and immediately flew around. At least they could feel his anxiety. You want to continue being whipped by my chaotic force, right? Li Zongjie said indifferently. This guy had once hurt Qi Yanran. If this guy was not useful, Li Zongjie would have smashed him into pieces. If he refined him directly, he would still be able to jump around here. This is the incarnation of the limitless true flame world, one of the 5 macro worlds. It is said that this person is extremely fierce and can destroy the world. Many people who came to the limitless true flame world were eaten by this guy. This person is very aggressive. Let's go quickly. Once he wakes up, everything in sight will be destroyed by him. No one will be able to escape. The tombstone spirit said. Li Zongjie and the others roughly understood. It seemed that all this was the doing of the so-called mysterious Heaven Great Emperor. The person in the fireball was one of the characters in the 5 macro worlds created by the mysterious Heaven Great Emperor. You said that he is an incarnation or the real body. What do you mean by incarnation? Qi Yanran asked. This guy had mentioned incarnation many times. This term was very unfamiliar to Qi Yanran and the others. Even in Qi Yanran's inherited memory, she did not obtain any information about this. Perhaps it was because her level was not high enough. The so-called incarnation is a manifestation of one's strength. Some experts will condense their will into an incarnation. After going through a tribulation, they will form this incarnation and finally merge it with their real body. It was Xian Shuang who explained, if you want to condense the power of this incarnation, you have to break through the celestial realm and reach the heavenly Lord realm. The person in the flame in front of him, it was the power of the incarnation of the so-called Lord of Heaven of the infinite true flame. The other party was using this method to cultivate. It was very likely that there was more than one incarnation. Instead, he would divide his will into dozens, or even hundreds of strands, and then go through a period of training. Finally, when this incarnation reached the great perfection realm, he would be able to retrieve this power. That was probably what he meant. This was a very advanced method. What the hell is this? It's so complicated. Doesn't that mean that this guy is actually just a manifestation of his will, and doesn't have a true soul? Li Zongjie asked. The tombstone spirit nodded. You can say that. But if you think that he's stupid, then you're too stupid. The incarnation has gone through a tribulation and gained wisdom. It's far better than you guys. It's 10 times, 100 times, 1,000 times, or even 10,000 times better. Li Zongjie and the others were completely fed up with the tombstone spirit's performance. Who cares about his incarnation? Since there's no room for negotiation, then let's just fight. Li Zongjie didn't care about these things. Since you want to destroy the Shengwu continent, you're going against the Wuxia city. Li Zongjie would never let you go. I'll definitely kill you. You used a method to freeze my will. Are you going to hand it over, or do you want me to refine you and get it myself? Li Zongjie said with a gentle smile. He was also very generous to allow the person in front of him to have a chance to choose. Such a person was really too magnanimous. That was because I used my tombstone true body to freeze you. Now that my true body has been shattered by you guys, I'm only left with a remnant soul. How can I perform such a unique skill? The tombstone spirit seemed to have thought of his broken tombstone and began to sob softly. Li Zongjie nodded. All right, it seems like you've chosen to let me refine you personally. Fine. Li Zongjie immediately moved his body and summoned his chaotic energy. The tombstone spirit seemed to be immune to other forces and couldn't hurt him at all. Only the chaotic energy could deal with it. Therefore, Li Zongjie summoned his chaotic energy without hesitation. The tombstone spirit clearly did not expect Li Zongjie to attack without any warning. Li Zongjie was completely unreasonable. Immediately, the tombstone spirit began to shout loudly. No, I'll tell you, it's the mountain and sea mind concentrating spell. The mountain and sea mind concentrating spell. As Li Zongjie listened to the introductions of these people, he gradually understood. These people seemed to be good at a type of attack called curse art. Li Zongjie had never come into contact with curse art, but he had seen the power of curse art. Hand it over? If I find any falsehood in this curse art, I won't hesitate. Li Zongjie said calmly. This tombstone spirit was clearly a coward, because it still wanted to escape if it had a chance. Therefore, it was willing to pay the price to resolve any threat from Li Zongjio. Although this tombstone spirit wasn't its true body, it still had a certain effect on the latter. Moreover, it knew that Li Zongjio's temper was so direct that it naturally didn't dare to provoke him. Immediately, the tombstone spirit opened its mouth. Then it spat out a scroll. The scroll was also engraved with a lot of large characters with mental energy. This is the secret of the mountain and sea mind concentrating spell. The tombstone spirit said, "With your bad temper, you're the most suitable person to go through the checkpoints of the 5 great worlds. There were endless treasures and secret techniques in there. What about it? It'll be a chance for you to reach the peak of your life. I can take you in, but you have to let me live and give me freedom. From now on, you and I don't owe each other anything. How about that?" The tombstone spirit said calmly. However, there was no sound in the surroundings at all. It immediately looked. Li Zongjio and the others had actually disappeared without a trace. In the blink of an eye, they were all studying the mountain and sea mind concentrating spell in their hands. Seeing that Li Zongjio and the others had really left, Black Soul also let out a sigh of relief helplessly. To think that I, the great Tao incarnation, actually had to compromise in such a way. It's really sad for the Tao of life and death. Then, Black Soul lowered its head and repaired the tombstone fragments on the ground. It looked extremely miserable. Chapter 1588. Li Zongjio and the others weren't interested in the latter's misery. The mountain and sea concentrating spell. Even after obtaining the scroll, Li Zongjio did not keep it for himself. Instead, he gave it to the others. Guo Wushuang had no way to cultivate, so he had to stay in the array formation to guard it. She perfected the black tortoise heavenly disaster formation. The remaining 3 people also practiced this spell together. Xianshuang didn't expect Li Zongjio to be so generous. The level of the spell was obviously very precious. Even in the upper world, it would be very popular. However, Li Zongjio didn't hesitate at all. Xianshuang was touched. The 3 of them studied the spell together. However, Xianshuang only studied it for 2 days. Then she left. Speaking of this incantation technique, it was quite strange. While Xianshuang was cultivating, every time he recited the main points, there would be a considerable change in his body. It would give Xianshuang a splitting headache. Xianshuang even thought that if she continued to cultivate, her body would explode. Her head was going to explode. Originally, Xianshuang had thought that her cultivation was because she had been practicing a fake spell. However, they were all reading the same book. Both Li Zongjio and Qi Yinran had obviously entered the state, and there was an extremely powerful aura brewing in their bodies. It was obvious that the 2 of them had succeeded in their cultivation. Damn it! Is my talent not good enough? I'm getting old. Xianshuang looked up at the sky and sighed. He also quit cultivating. Apparently, the spell wasn't suitable for him. Or he should go and tinker with the formation. He should go and check on the incarnation of the Wuji Lord of Heaven. At the same time, he was complaining in his heart. How boring was the Xiantian Great Emperor? Why did he create such a thing? He was obviously here to make trouble. Creating such a thing, and then turning the other worlds into a mess. How wicked! Wuxia City had successfully moved to the top of the Sacred Flame Royal City. However, it wasn't directly above the Sacred Flame Royal City. Otherwise, a casual gust of wind from the Wuxia City would blow some rubbish down to the Sacred Flame Royal City. Moreover, what if Wuxia City was really shot down by someone one day? What would happen? There would be no saving it. It would fall from the sky like a huge meteorite. After it landed, it would destroy the Sacred Flame Royal City. That was 2 cities that had lost their lives. Many people were amazed by the successful transfer. In the world, only the Wuxia City had the power to do that. Only the White Deer residents would be able to accomplish such a task. As for the fireball in the Blackwater Forest, the White Deer mansion didn't make it public. They only warned others not to go near the place. Otherwise, if they didn't do it, something. Ordinary people didn't need to know what was really going on. This was because it would be detrimental to the management of the Saint Flame dynasty. In Qingquan Sacred City, Emperor Shengyan was sweating profusely. He was really worried. What if the Luoxia city flew over and hung above the sacred flame royal city? What should he do? Wouldn't it be a declaration that the Luoxia city was the real ruler? Others lived in the sky. You lived on the ground. How could you control the people who lived in the sky? Fortunately, they didn't have such intentions. Sacred Flame Great Emperor was so scared that he immediately brought his men to Luoxia city to see what was going on. He wanted to know if there was any dissatisfaction with his management. He didn't expect that there would be such a big movement. The number of experts in the Luoxia city had far surpassed the royal family. There was no competition at all. Li Tianqing and the others only met for show and had a meal. After all, the other party was the Emperor Xingyan. At least, he was the master of the royal family. They had to give him some face. It was obviously very hard to govern such a huge country. However, most of the time, Li Tianqing was also anxious to find Qi Xiaohan. The two of them were like brothers who hadn't seen each other for many years. They drank and chatted happily. The people in the Luoxia city were boiling. One must know. Now the entire Luoxia city, some of the businesses in the Luoxia city, were all for the sake of it. This was the reputation of the Luoxia city. But in fact there was nothing around the Luoxia city. It was just because of its good reputation. They wanted to occupy a place and contribute to the Luoxia city. It could be said that they had built a relationship with the Luoxia city. They wanted to build a relationship with the White Deer Mansion. In case something happened in the future, and they needed the help of the White Deer Mansion, they would be able to build a connection. But now the Luoxia city was near the sacred flame royal city. It directly raised the level of the Luoxia city. The transportation here was convenient. Doing any kind of trade could be done easily and directly. Such a good thing instantly caused these people to boil with excitement. At the same time, it was a huge impact on some of the merchants in the Luoxia city. It was equivalent to reaching the sky in a single step. Xiao Zhao also found time to pay a visit to Li Tianqing. He didn't expect such a thing to happen. It was really the first time in the history of the city that such a thing had happened. Xiao Zhao was very clear about the current situation of the entire continent. So he really needed the ultimate weapon plan. Time passed in the blink of an eye. 2 months had passed. Xian Shuang was also glad that Li Zhongjie gave him a pill to save his life. Otherwise, he would have been buried in the ground and laid to rest in the tomb. Even now Xian Shuang was still alive and kicking. It was all because of Li Zhongjie's pill. This kid is really amazing, Xian Shuang said. He was also very emotional. Half a month ago, Qi Yanran withdrew from the state of cultivation. Xian Shuang wanted to see this move, but Qi Yanran shook her head helplessly. I still can't understand the last seal. There is an obvious repulsive force. Obviously Qi Yanran also failed. Only Li Zhongjie was their last chance. Don't worry. He will succeed, Xian Shuang said. She didn't expect that Xian Shuang would comfort Qi Yanran. It seemed that Xian Shuang was more familiar with Li Zhongjie. Qi Yanran also looked at Xian Shuang in surprise. Right at this moment, a wave of fluctuation came from the ground. Then countless cracks appeared on the ground. From within the crack, a blazing aura burst forth. Chapter 1589. The scorching aura gradually increased. The aura that was spewed out could instantly reach a temperature that was dozens of times hotter than magma. Once one got close to the heat that was emitted would instantly roast one. Even if one had the cultivation of a Yuan king, one would not be able to withstand the heat. Oh no! The two of them looked at each other. Immediately, they flew toward the black tortoise heavenly calamity array. Huo Wushuang had been staying in the array all this time. However, Huo Wushuang was not a real person. She was just a spirit. Therefore, most of the time, the energy that she could control was not as good as that of a real person. Fortunately, Qi Yanran and Xian Shuang arrived quickly. In the blink of an eye, they appeared in front of them. What a strong energy fluctuation. It seems that he is about to be revived. The two of them looked extremely solemn. Li Zhongjie had not woken up yet. He was still cultivating in the mountains. Open the array. Can't we let him escape? Run away, Xian Shuang said. The three of them worked together to open the Black Tortoise Heavenly Calamity Array. Suddenly, a huge shadow appeared in the sky above the Blackwater Forest. It was a divine beast, the Black Tortoise, with a dragon head, tortoise body and snake tail. Although the power of this Black Tortoise was not fully restored, it was still very powerful. At least for the St. Martial continent, this power was about to reach its limit. With a casual move, it felt as if the space in front of it would shatter. Rumble. Under the Black Tortoise, a fireball was also rapidly condensing. In the fireball, a figure gradually appeared, and even the flames around him were gradually retracted into his body. In the end, there were only 2 balls of fire left, which circled around his body. It was as if there was a specific pattern. The 2 small fireballs were spinning around him. This person's true appearance was finally revealed at this moment. It was a middle-aged man with red hair, a red beard and red eyes. He had a pair of black pants on his lower body. It was unknown what material they were made of, but they were not burned by the flames. There was a hideous tattoo on his upper body. It looked like a ferocious beast. Moreover, this ferocious beast seemed to be able to wake up at any time. It turned into a shadow and wrapped around his body. The incarnation of Limitless Immortal. Originally, the incarnation of the Limitless True Lord was sufficient to become the gatekeeper of the first trial in the Limitless True Flame Great World. However, because of this crack, he came to this lower world. This was an extremely precious opportunity for the incarnation of Limitless Supreme. In that lousy world he was a gatekeeper. That was really stupid. Now that there was a chance to escape from that world full of restrictions, it was obviously a very rare and precious opportunity for this incarnation. However, the incarnation of Limitless True Lord did not expect this either. He had only just arrived in this world, and had only killed a few people to replenish his energy. In the end, he encountered an existence similar to a guardian from the lower world, which was the Black Sea Overlord. Only someone with the strength of the Black Sea Overlord could injure him. But he was too strong. Even the Black Sea Overlord could not make him stay. He could only force him to leave. He couldn't catch this cunning guy. After the other party escaped, he was unable to leave the Black Sea. Therefore, he could not continue to pursue and let the other party escape. Because of that fierce battle, he had also spent a period of time. It was completely an injury on top of an injury. Fortunately, there were not many experts in other places. Even these experts could not do anything to him. As for the Black Tortoise Heavenly Calamity Array that he had set up while he was recovering in seclusion, it was nothing to him. Indeed, it was not a threat at all. Some inferior trash from an inferior world. Want to fight him? Can't compete with him. It was simply wishful thinking. Today, let me break the thing that you inferior trash from an inferior world are so proud of. The incarnation of the Limitless Supreme sneered. Immediately his figure swept into the air. He punched the power of the Black Tortoise that was suppressing above his head. It was enough to see the power of fire condensing. When the fire condensed, it also showed a rather terrifying aura. Boom! The fire rushed towards the Black Tortoise. The other party just casually made a move, but it gave Qi Yin Ran and the others a lot of pressure. At this moment, they could feel the strength of the other party. It was so real. It was so strong that it was terrifying. Boom! It was just an ordinary punch. It was enough to repel the shadow of the Black Tortoise. It was almost as if the world was turned upside down. They could not withstand a few punches from the other party at all. Soon they would collapse. Have you seen it now, you weak mortals? The incarnation of the Limitless Supreme smiled faintly. The punch just now was also a test. After all, he was not a fool. When he first came, he had more or less suffered a loss. Naturally, he could not be careless now. However, he had to be sufficiently awe-inspiring with his words. Otherwise, what would he do? Others thought that he could not do it. Sometimes, this kind of awe-inspiring mouth would be even more powerful. After all, this kind of thing needed to be done properly. After testing the punch, they also understood that these people were really weak and did not do it on purpose. Compared to the woman in the Black Sea, you are still far behind. The incarnation of the Limitless Supreme mocked. Then, he suddenly jumped up, opened his mouth, and spat out a flame from his mouth. It was like the breath skill that a giant dragon was good at. But when this breath directly exploded, the power of the flame was like thousands of giant dragons rolling in the sea. The stormy waves that it set off were even more shocking. Now, Qi Yanran said. The three of them exerted their strength at the same time. The Black Tortoise Heavenly Tribulation Array was not a defensive array. It was a real offensive array. As the array reversed, immediately a cold light surged over. Immediately this power fell. Above the sky, there seemed to be countless bolts of lightning falling from the sky, and there was also a trace of chaotic power contained in it. Chaotic heavenly thunder. This was the power that Li Zongjio had fused with a special method. At this moment it was released, and naturally, its power was boundless. Qi Yanran's timing was also quite accurate. Then, a bolt of chaos lightning came crashing down. Boom! It directly blasted into the mouth of the incarnation of the Limitless Supreme. That blazing heat immediately, the power of the flame, mixed with the power of the thunder, directly exploded in the body of the Limitless Supreme. Oh, the latter was obviously extremely shocked. He did not expect that these people had a backup plan, and directly used this move. It also gave him no chance to resist at all. One move hit the target, although the Black Tortoise Array was a little impacted. But this incarnation of the Limitless Supreme, it was also blasted into the body by the chaotic thunder. Such a situation immediately caused the body of the incarnation of the Limitless Supreme to rapidly expand. Qi Yanran and the others were also very nervous as they watched the changes in the latter's situation. Even such an attack, it was unable to directly destroy the latter's body. At least in their previous estimation, this move was enough to completely shatter the latter's body. But now it seemed that it did not achieve the expected effect. They saw that the incarnation of the Limitless Supreme actually forcibly swallowed this chaotic heavenly thunder. His body had clearly expanded. It had even expanded to the limit. But he still forcibly held it back. Furthermore, he forcibly suppressed this expanding power. In the end, he actually directly held the power of this chaotic heavenly thunder in his stomach and completely digested it. Almost just a little. When the latter consumed a lot of energy to digest the power of this chaotic heavenly thunder, his eyes also became quite terrifying. He stared at the three figures in the sky. Chapter 1590. The incarnation of the Wuxia immortal from the upper world almost fell down here today. This caused the latter to feel quite angry. So at this moment, he also released his aura at the same time. Boom! A surge of aura shot up into the sky. After that, the Wuxia immortal condensed a spell in his hand. Qi Yanran and the others had just studied this spell. When the other party used it, there was a trace of familiarity, and it felt very close. Dezhen Flame Spell. The spell was cast. Immediately, the power of fire quickly condensed. It seemed that there was also a blazing flame in the latter's hand. Buzz! The moment the Dezhen Flame spell was released, it immediately turned into a beam of strong light. At the same time, the Qilin tattoo on the latter's body seemed to have come to life at this moment. It rushed toward the sky and directly caught the power of the flame, and quickly rushed toward the sky. Boom! The moment the Black Tortoise was hit by the latter, all of them were unable to withstand the powerful energy contained within. It was directly torn apart. Li Zongjio and the others worked together and spent several months to set up the array. They organized 4 celestial realm experts to cast it at the same time. However, the effect of this formation was obviously very unsatisfactory. The main reason was that the other party was too strong. A group of mortals. Seeing the Black Tortoise being destroyed, the incarnation of the immortal said coldly. At the same time, he looked at the shocked expressions of these mortals, who even looked like they didn't want to die. Such a complicated scene obviously made him very happy. High and mighty. What he wanted was this feeling of being high and mighty. He wanted to ruthlessly trample everyone under his feet, and let these people clearly understand who was the real expert. Resistance was futile. As long as you submit to me, I will spare your lives. The incarnation of the immortal said with a laugh. It seemed that for the three of them, surrender was the only way to survive. They had cultivated for so long to obtain the strength and status they had today, and they didn't want to die like this. But at the same time, Because of his strength, he was considered to be one of the top existences in the mortal world. How could they just bow down as they wished? He had to put up a good struggle. When He Wushuang saw this, he knew that everything was over. Any preparations made would be in vain. Their fates would depend on this final battle. He was definitely going to have a real battle with the other party. Otherwise, the other party would definitely think that it would be easy for them to get their hands on it. Qi Yanran naturally knew that this battle was inevitable. Xian Shuang shook her body. He transformed into a frost dragon. Help me tell that kid to hurry up and refine it. I hope that the two of you can take care of the Dragon Island in the future. After Xian Shuang finished speaking, her entire body glowed. Almost instantly her power gathered. Within a radius of 10,000 miles. Even the clouds in the sky were frozen by this force and turned into frost. Immediately, the power of frost condensed. It was also quite intense. The Ice Blast WRM's aura reached its peak at this moment. Furthermore, he was constantly making breakthroughs. He's burning his own lifespan. Return to peak condition. Qi Yanran exclaimed when she saw this scene. She had never thought that this old dragon from more than 100,000 years ago, who was always smiling and liked to ask others to show him some respect, would be so resolute in this life and death crisis. Without saying anything, he burned his remaining lifespan and vitality to restore his cultivation to the peak condition. It was really moving. Such an action was really too great. Originally, this Ice Blast WRM was an expert in the heavenly dragon realm. However, after being frozen for hundreds of thousands of years, his power was fading rapidly. It could even be said that it was a miracle that he could come back after hundreds of thousands of years. An expert from more than 100,000 years ago had awakened and gained vitality. Perhaps this was what God wanted him to do, specifically to prevent this disaster from happening. So he came back to life at this time. Celestial Realm. At this moment, the power of the Ice Blast WRM had been completely released. The momentum formed by itself, and the heaven and earth was also amazing and quite strong. Therefore, the incarnation of the immortal couldn't help but exclaim. Another expert in the celestial realm had come to deal with a group of innate realm experts. For the incarnation of the immortal, it was a piece of cake. But to face the expert in the celestial realm in front of him, in fact, it was a bit difficult for the incarnation of the immortal. Moreover, the celestial realm experts in the lower world seemed to be more powerful. At this moment, the incarnation of the immortal clearly felt the pressure. At this moment, the Ice Blast WRM's aura did not stop. Instead, it continued to climb. Boom! The Ice Blast WRM released its Dragon Ball. Suddenly, the whole world seemed to be condensed with a thick layer of frost. In the blink of an eye, the Blackwater Forest became a world of ice and snow. Even if they were tens of thousands of miles away, they could still feel the sudden arrival of this chilling power. Everyone else was also stunned. How could it appear so quickly? This kind of strength. It was really shocking. Why do I feel like it's suddenly winter? Tens of thousands of miles away in the Azure Wave Giant City, everyone shuddered at the same time. Then, they all looked at the direction that used to belong to Wuxia City. It was said that the reason why Wuxia City migrated was because Evil Lord was cultivating in the Blackwater Forest. Therefore, such a commotion could very well have been caused by the evil dominator. It was shocking. As expected of Evil Lord, his strength was really quite terrifying. Just by feeling the movement of this power, it was already beyond heaven and earth. The Ice Blast WRM descended from the sky. It also held the Dragon Ball in its mouth. When the incarnation of the immortal saw this move, his face became quite ugly. At least, it could be said that even he could not resist this move. However, it was not so easy to kill him. At the moment when the power of frost descended, the incarnation of the immortal instantly activated the Qilin tattoo on his body. A surge of energy enveloped him. Then, the power of frost completely froze the incarnation of the immortal. This frost was the power that the Ice Blast WRM had accumulated for hundreds of thousands of years. In an instant, thousands of miles were frozen. However, a gentle force wrapped around Qi Yanran. Even Huo Wushuang was instantly frozen by this force and turned back into the Wushuang sword. Huo Wushuang was just a sword spirit. It was already good enough that he was able to focus on protecting the person when he made the move. He couldn't possibly protect every blade of grass and tree in the surroundings, could he? That would consume too much energy. Damn it. The power of frost instantly froze the incarnation of the immortal. She did not give the incarnation of the immortal a chance. He had just escaped not long ago, but he was trapped again. As an expert from the upper world, originally, he wanted to come to the lower realm and dominate the world. Who would have thought that he would be frozen time and time again by someone using some kind of method? This time, I'd like to see what other means you have. The day I break the ice is the day your continent falls into a sea of fire and hell. Qi Yanran did not have time to stop Xian Shuang's killing move. She could not stop it, because if Xian Shuang did not make a move, they did not have any power to compete with it. There was no other way. If the other party made a move, it could definitely kill Qi Yanran and the others. However, Xian Shuang sacrificed herself. She created an iceberg. The power released by the iceberg was to completely suppress the latter. However, it was hard to know how long this power of frost could last. It was also possible that the incarnation of the immortal would be frozen to death on this endless iceberg. It was the most powerful dragon in the heavenly dragon realm. The power of the Ice Blast Wirem really opened Qi Yanran's eyes. Huo Wushuang finally woke up from the sword energy. However, she could not break free. Fortunately, Qi Yanran quickly dug out the Wushuang sword. She broke the ice on the surface. What a strong chill. I feel that my power is flowing away rapidly, Huo Wushuang said. She also had a lingering fear in her heart. It seemed that the cold air below was also something extremely dangerous to her. Chapter 1591. Obviously, this was the latter's indiscriminate attack. But fortunately, the other party was completely sealed. That was the most important thing. I don't know how long this ice power can last. Qi Yanran's brows were deeply furrowed. She thought that with the strength of Li Zongjiu and her, they were at least at the peak of the realm. She dared not say that she was invincible on the continent, but she could at least rest easy. But after this series of events, these experts descended from the sky. It also made Qi Yanran understand that she was still far from being able to fight with these people. Her own strength did not have such an easy breakthrough. And once these top experts arrived, the first thing they would look for was Li Zongjiu and the others. They could only defeat them. Naturally, they would be able to rule the entire continent. They could even do whatever they wanted on this continent. But Qi Yanran would never let such a thing happen. So it naturally became a kind of destiny for the two of them. They were destined to accept the challenges from these experts. This was the most uncomfortable thing. After all, if the sky fell, it was the tall one here who held it up. There was no way to escape. In comparison, Qi Yanran belonged to the tall one. It was only when they could no longer hold on that more experts would appear. Originally, she had a strong helper, Wang Jing. But obviously, Wang Jing was also dealing with the battle on the Ape Clan continent. She did not know the current situation of the Ape Clan continent. As for the situation of the Sacred Martial Realm, there was no need to worry. The Sacred Martial Realm seemed to be the entrance of the Sacred Martial Realm. If people came down from the upper world, they would first have to reach the Sacred Martial Realm before they could go to the Sacred Martial Realm. As long as they could protect the Sacred Martial Realm, in that case, nothing would happen at all. 3 months later, the Blackwater Forest was already covered by thick ice and snow. As the power of the mysterious frost was gradually released, the power formed in the surroundings was also getting stronger. So the mysterious frost power was also constantly condensing. It was getting stronger every day. This was the effect of the self-destruction of the Heavenly Dragon Realm expert strength. Clearly, to break through the Ice Mountain's suppression, one would need an extremely strong power. Moreover, the little ice dragons of the Dragon Island would often come here to pay their respects. Every time they paid their respects, a new iceberg would be formed here. This caused the cold air within to become even more intense. After Long Ji and the rest of Dragon Island learned about Black Frost's great deeds, They all felt proud of their frost dragon ancestor. The ancestors had sacrificed themselves in order to protect the continent. But in fact, not many people knew about it. Sometimes, heroes don't need to be remembered. But there were always people who remembered. Even the cave where Li Zongjie was cultivating was covered in a thick layer of frost. Li Zongjie opened his eyes. A powerful fluctuation spread out in all directions. Then they rushed into the distance. Such an intense fluctuation was extremely shocking. It was truly shocking. Qi Yanran rushed over quickly with the unparalleled sword. When Qi Yanran arrived, Li Zongjie was already standing on a snowy mountain, looking at the series of white glaciers in front of him. There seemed to be an infinite light in his eyes. It seemed to be under the endless ice mountain. A dragon soul was lying there. Seeing the appearance of the dragon soul, Yi Zichen was stunned. Li Zongjie already knew what had happened. Qi Yanran quietly landed. "How long has it been?" Li Zongjie asked. 3 months. Qi Yanran answered. 3 months. Black Frost's dragon soul hasn't dissipated. I'll refine a soul-gathering pill to gather his dragon soul. Maybe there's a chance to revive him. Li Zongjie said. He can be revived. Qi Yanran didn't expect Li Zongjie to have such means. The iceberg in front of her was endless. It was all formed by the other party's power. All the power of flesh and blood was buried in it. But the dragon soul was still condensed and didn't dissipate. Maybe this might be the best news they had heard in a long time. Being able to resurrect Xian Shuang was a great boost to their morale, at least for them. It was indeed a pity that Xian Shuang had been sacrificed like that. Many people were caught off guard. Li Zongjie didn't say much. First, he checked the situation here to see how long the power of the glacier could last. However, from the looks of it, it shouldn't be a problem for at least 4 to 5 years. But Black Frost's soul couldn't hold on for so long. In 8 or 10 days, it would probably dissipate. When that time came, he would truly be dead to the point where he couldn't be any more dead. So Li Zongjie seized the time to refine the soul-gathering pill. But before that, he inserted the unparalleled sword into the ice mountain. The heart of the blue sea and the unparalleled sword could also increase the effect of the ice power. At least the increased power could ensure that the ice mountain wouldn't melt so quickly. The power release could at least ensure that it could continue to trap the incarnation of the immortal below. Li Zongjie was busy refining the soul-gathering pill. Of course, he had all the herbs. Basically, Li Zongjie would replenish the herbs every once in a while. After all, as an alchemist, even if he wasn't refining pills, he had to ensure that he had the herbs to use. Only in this way would he be able to refine the elixir that he wanted at the critical moment. Usually, he would just casually prepare some elixir with him. The soul-gathering pill was a very rare pill, so he rarely refined it. It took him 7 days to refine the pill. Li Zongjie succeeded in refining the soul-gathering pill. This pill wasn't for people but for souls. So Li Zongjie directly sprinkled the pill on the ice mountain. The power of the pill gradually integrated into the ice mountain. Qi Yanran and Ho Wushuang both gathered around, ready to witness the miracle that was about to happen. Immediately, they saw the light flowing on the ice mountain. As the light kept surging, it quickly condensed in the direction of the soul-gathering pill. Buzz buzz! It seemed to be the sound of an electric current flowing through the ice mountain. They could feel that the power in it was increasing rapidly. At first, it just absorbed some remnant souls. But later, Xian Shuang's soul also felt the call from the pill and quickly condensed. Qi Yanran was also an alchemist. She didn't even think that the pill could have such a magical effect. When the pill condensed the soul, the figure of a frost Wyrm was also growing rapidly. Immediately they could all understand, this level of strength was already at a very high level. It was hard to describe. In her beautiful eyes, she could only watch the shocking and astonishing scene unfold. Chapter 1592. Xian Shuang's soul power quickly condensed. Qi Yanran and Ho Wushuang were also stunned. However, Xian Shuang's soul also needed a place to stay for the time being. Therefore, Li Zongjie temporarily put Xian Shuang's soul in the Chaos Bell. This was equivalent to Li Zongjie refining Xian Shuang's soul into the Chaos Bell's weapon spirit. However, The weapon spirit that Li Zongjie refined was to gather these broken souls and send them to the Chaos Bell. The attributes of the Frost Dragon and the Chaos Bell didn't match, so it wasn't difficult to store them temporarily. When the Tombstone Spirit saw the power of the Frost Dragon condensing, he immediately understood. It must be the clone of the Wuxia immortal. Didn't he tell them to run away? Now, he had been beaten to the point of being a remnant soul. However, he was actually very lucky to be able to keep such a remnant soul. That's great, I have a companion now. The Tombstone Spirit couldn't help but say. The Mountain and Sea Concentrating Spell. That kind of spell couldn't be successfully cultivated, even if one wanted to. There were thousands of great Daos in the world. If one couldn't find a suitable spell, it would be very difficult to cultivate it to such a state. Under normal circumstances, it was impossible to cultivate it successfully. If one tried to cultivate it by force, it could even cause one's cultivation to regress. Because the cultivation of this spell was like casting a sharp sword in one's body. However, if one's stomach couldn't accommodate this sharp sword, it would be very troublesome, because this sharp sword would directly penetrate one's chest. Therefore, it would directly backfire. That was the principle of acting according to one's ability. Therefore, the Tombstone Spirit didn't hold back. He didn't even need any tricks to hand over his spell. Rumble. Li Zongjie put away the souls of the Frost Dragon, and Xian Shuang to stop vomiting. Naturally, the power of the iceberg was directly reduced by more than half. Therefore, the clone of the immortal below would definitely take the opportunity to break out of the iceberg. Be careful, this person is very strong. Qi Yanran was a little worried. After all, the other party's strength was not as simple as the previous opponents. In the past, he could more or less put up a fight against his opponents. However, when facing this person, they had no power to fight back at all. They could only wait for the other party to decide their fate. Qi Yanran had not felt such a sense of powerlessness for a long time. However, he could feel it once more from the clone of Limitless True Lord. I know he can't run away, Li Zongjie said calmly. At this moment, he would definitely not let this person off so easily. Although Xian Shuang was not Li Zongjie's good friend, she was not a good friend of his. However, he was definitely a friend of his. This mere incarnation of the Limitless Lord had forced the Frost Dragon into such a state that was equivalent to directly killing his friend. Therefore, Li Zongjie was definitely going to take revenge on this guy. Crack. The ice cracked. Cracks began to appear on the entire iceberg. Then, the peerless sword flew down from the ice mountain and landed in Li Zongjie's hand. You don't have to use the peerless sword, Li Zongjie said. At the same time, there was already power gradually gathering between his fingers. Immediately, Li Zongjie raised his head and looked forward. His eyes focused slightly. It seemed that he had made the decision and was now waiting for the other party to show up. You succeeded? Qi Yanran was also very surprised. Because, over the past 3 months, Qi Yanran had been trying to see if she could cultivate or not. However, the result was very unsatisfactory. She did not succeed. She failed again and again. At this moment, seeing Li Zongjie make a move, of course, she was very surprised. Of course, Li Zongjie said. It seemed to be a very easy thing to do. However, in fact, Li Zongjie had experienced countless life and death situations in the past 5 months. In the end, he cultivated all of this. Every time he condensed this spell, there would be a fatal backlash in the end. Every time, Li Zongjie was able to forcefully withstand it and persevere. It was only until the last time that he succeeded completely. At this moment, Li Zongjie's incantation technique had reached the consummation stage. He knew that the other party would take this opportunity to kill him. In fact, Li Zongjie was also waiting for the other party. The iceberg shattered. The mountains collapsed and the earth cracked. The turbulent power was quickly released. A ball of flame burst out, as if it was going to melt the surrounding glaciers. The figure that condensed was the incarnation of Master Wuji. I want you to die. He had been trapped for a full 5 months. During these 5 months, the power of Limitless Sage's incarnation had been weakening every day. Fortunately, the other party's strength could only be considered average. Otherwise, The power of frost alone was enough to devour him completely, and there would be no chance for him to appear again. He reckoned that he would not live to see the day when he broke out of seclusion. This time, he was able to escape with a murderous aura and rushed out directly. He was determined to kill Qi Yanran and the others completely. He would not show any mercy and did not need to subdue these people. But unfortunately, the incarnation of Master Wuji thought too highly of himself. The way he saw it, these people had already used up all their tricks. Even the only dragon in the celestial realm was now dead. What other powerful moves could they have? There was no need for him to worry at all. Mountain and sea concentration spell. Li Zhongjiu's voice fell. From his body, a powerful aura was instantly released. This aura seemed to penetrate between heaven and earth, and instantly condensed this powerful force in front of him. It directly rushed down to the people below. Boom! What? When the incarnation of Limitless Sage felt the power coming down on him, he instantly felt like he was being suppressed. This powerful spell was released. Limitless Supreme was instantly stunned. How is this possible? The spell of Great Emperor Xiantian. Boom! The powerful force instantly sealed the ladder. The glaciers within a radius of tens of thousands of miles were also smashed at this moment. However, all of the power had been condensed. There was a loud boom. It was as if everything was covered by a powerful force in an instant. It was the incarnation of Master Wuji. He had never expected that these people would have so many tricks up their sleeves. Furthermore, they were constantly attacking with their attacks. It made him unable to resist. He could only be sealed and suppressed again. This time, the iceberg was directly shattered, and the incarnation was smashed down with a boom. A big pit appeared at the bottom of the iceberg. The surrounding ice was also quickly piled up. All of them poured into the deep pit. The incarnation of Master Wuji could only be buried under this ice cave. Hunyuan Bell. Li Zhongjiu covered the Hunyuan Bell with a boom. He completely sealed the incarnation. He couldn't escape. It was impossible to leave in a short period of time. But after using this move, Yi Zichen's eyes lit up. Li Zhongjiu's body, his power was also rapidly dissipating. His body fell from the sky. Fortunately, Qi Yanran noticed that something was wrong and hurried forward to catch Li Zhongjiu. Otherwise, he would have been in a sorry state when he fell to the ground. I'm fine. Fortunately, this person is extremely arrogant. With this spell, he won't be able to come out for at least 5 years. Chapter 1593. 5 years. In fact, 5 years seemed to be a long time, but it passed in the blink of an eye. He easily passed through it. After Li Zhongjiu cast the spell, he rested for 3 months. After all, to cast the spell, he needed to be at least in the celestial being realm. Li Zhongjiu could be considered to have forcefully used it, so it had caused great damage to his body. During the 3 months, Li Zhongjiu lost a lot of energy. He looked like he was a few years older. However, he recovered after a while. After all, Evil Lord wasn't called that for nothing. After refining a few pills, he was able to replenish the life force that he had lost. At the same time, during these 3 months, Xian Shuang woke up. When Xian Shuang woke up in the chaos bell, she couldn't believe it. Li Zhongjiu didn't restrict Xian Shuang's movement, so she could come and go freely in the chaos bell. When Xian Shuang woke up, she knew it. She must have been saved by Li Zhongjiu. Otherwise, how could she come back to life? Seeing such a miracle, Xian Shuang was astonished. She was extremely surprised. Although his power had been greatly weakened, he was still able to come back to life. It was already very fortunate. Xian Shuang quickly fell to the ice mountain. In the end, he spent half a month using the ice to create a body for himself. Qi Yanran refined an ice bead for the latter. She could stay in the ice bead. There was a formation in the ice bead. It could nurture one's own strength and help them master their own body faster. Obviously, it was a good way. Xian Shuang couldn't speak for the time being, but she had already expressed her gratitude to Li Zhongjiu. Even with Li Zhongjiu's cultivation, he reached this level after casting the spell. From this, one could see how powerful the backlash from the curse was. Li Zhongjiu knew that he might be able to hit the ladder this time, but 5 years later, he might not be able to. The other party's strength would definitely not remain the same. Most importantly, he had gained a huge advantage this time. The other party didn't expect this at all, so he got such an opportunity. The latter was hit squarely in the chest. If he wanted to completely eliminate them after 5 years, he would need to have the power to fight against them. During this period of time, Li Zhongjiu also made a trip to the Black Sea, hoping to find the Black Sea Overlord. He wanted to see if he could get some new knowledge. He had obtained some new clues. However, Li Zhongjiu was unable to locate the Black Sea Overlord. Perhaps it was because his strength had yet to reach the required level. That was normal. The Black Sea Overlord was truly not giving them any face at all. They had lost the lead of the Black Sea Overlord. Li Zhongjiu wanted to gain enough experience in these 5 years. In order to obtain true strength, one would need to embark on a true path. There was only one way. He had to give himself enough time and opportunity to make a breakthrough. That was the 5 great worlds that the gravestone had mentioned. Li Zhongjiu could only truly go to the great world to undergo a trial. He might even have to enter the world of Wuxia True Flames. Only then could he truly find a way to deal with the incarnation of the true Lord. Isn't this too dangerous? We haven't even figured out the true identity of that guy. Qi Yanran was extremely worried. If there was an accident during this process, he might not be able to come back. It was hard to say what he would encounter in the great world. If he were to encounter danger, he wouldn't even have a helper. It would definitely be a great danger. In a situation where he was alone and without help, he would only die in despair. That's right, kid. 5 years later, with our strength, we might be able to get rid of this guy. Xian Shuang appeared and said. However, Xian Shuang now looked more like an ice sculpture of a small dragon, although the soul had been collected and returned to its place. But Xian Shuang's? Her physical body had been destroyed. It had turned into an endless iceberg. Therefore, Xian Shuang could only use the ice to rebuild her body. It was probably impossible to restore her physical body. It would also take some time to transform into a human being again. This is just an accident. If there are 2 or even 3 people like this next time, what can we do? Only by quickly strengthening ourselves can we not be afraid of these problems. Li Zhongjiu said blandly. Since they were already here, in the face of such a situation, they had to abandon everything. They had to really give it their all. Otherwise, sooner or later, they wouldn't be able to withstand it. They wouldn't be so lucky every time they died. This is really... Xian Shuang couldn't help but say. She had already died once. However, she knew that Li Zhongjiu was risking his life to go to a very dangerous place to seek power. It could give birth to such a monster. How could such a place be simple? Therefore, Li Zhongjiu would most likely die this time. Although Qi Yanran was reluctant, she also knew that no one could dissuade Li Zhongjiu from his choice. Besides, Li Zhongjiu was right. Qi Yanran also wanted to go by herself. She would take the risk in place of Li Zhongjiu. She would go through the danger and gain power. However, her strength was obviously not as good as Li Zhongjiu's. In terms of survival ability, she was far inferior to Li Zhongjiu's. What she needed was, she had to silently support Li Zhongjiu's decision behind his back. And she had to do it before Li Zhongjiu came back. She had to guard the Shengwu continent well. That was the best response to Li Zhongjiu. If he wanted to go to the big world to gain experience, he had to go through the Tombstone Spirit. Previously, the Tombstone Spirit had said that there was a way to send Li Zhongjiu there. As long as he could send Li Zhongjiu there and send him back, he would let him go. However, before he left, Xiao Zhao sent a message. He needed Li Zhongjiu to go back to the White Deer Mansion. Originally, Li Zhongjiu was going to visit his parents in Wuxia City. He might not be able to come back. However, Li Zhongjiu was confident that he would definitely return from this trip. Otherwise, this trip would have been meaningless. Let's go. Xiao Zhao seems to have something important to do. Li Zhongjiu said. Xian Shuang stayed for the time being to guard this world of ice and snow. She could not let the incarnation of the true Lord come back. If that happened, it would be too scary. Holy Flame Imperial City White Deer Mansion. In a secret experimental base. Li Tianqing, Li Zhongjiu, and the others were also there. Xiao Zhao was also a little excited. This is the first product of our White Deer Mansion's ultimate weapon protection. Yuan Railgun. Chapter 1594. Almost everyone had arrived. They came specifically to see what kind of weapon was being researched. Li Zongjie was also very curious. Xiao Zhao had told him about this so-called ultimate weapon project. However, Li Zongjie did not take it to heart. Because in Li Zongjie's opinion, these so-called ultimate weapons were not worth mentioning at all. As long as one's strength was strong enough, there was no weapon that could not be destroyed. Even these attacks could be easily blocked. It was not a problem at all. However, Li Zongjie did not stop this plan. After all, Li Zongjie had seen some of the technological developments 3,000 years later, and they were indeed quite advanced. Even in the future, it happened to be at the boundary between the old and new cultivation methods, and it might be directly surpassed. And let some people who were not strong enough carry out some. Arming and self-protection was also a good way. There might be one catastrophe after another in the future. It needed not only these top experts. It was also a state where everyone was a soldier. At the same time, when it came to things like developing technology, there had to be people walking in front. Therefore, Li Zongjie did not mind. For Li Zongjie, things like money and resources were innumerable. Now, the resources were enough for Xiao Zhao to use at will, and he was completely not limited by himself. There was enough time and opportunity to create more possibilities, and for Ollie, Li Zongjie supported the Yuan Railgun. Everyone did not understand what magnetism was. Even Xiao Zhao had sent someone over to explain the situation. However, these people still did not understand. There was no other way. It did not matter whether they understood the principle or not. Therefore, everyone came specially to watch. A cannon made of metal appeared. There was something similar to roller skates on the cannon, which could help it to move around. Except for the bottom that was installed by oneself, there was no blind spot to speak of. Let's get started, Li Zongjie said. The various displays were not important. The most important thing was how much power it had, at least in Li Zongjie's opinion. But in fact, as a weapon, this was naturally the most basic part. If even the power was not enough, then it would be useless no matter how good your aim was. Immediately, Xiao Zhao also gave some instructions. Soon, someone carried out a huge cage. Inside the cage was an abyssal monster. The latter's strength was already at the peak of the primitive emperor realm. However, under long-term dehydration, the strength of this abyssal monster would also decrease a lot. Someone used water to help the latter recover, and then directly opened the iron cage. And behind the Yuan Railgun, there was a basin of water was placed. Although there was only a little bit of water, it was already a fatal attraction to the abyssal monster. Boom! The abyssal monster was like a runaway horse. Its speed suddenly burst out. It was incomparably fast and ferocious like thunder. But at the moment when the abyssal monster was charging, the Yuan Railgun had already made a prediction. Then with a loud bang, the abyssal monster was shattered into pieces. The attack of the Yuan Railgun was like a ray of light. And even this ray of light was like a transparent energy strip. When the crowd saw this, they all sucked in a breath of cold air. It was killed in an instant. The abyssal monster that was close to the Supreme Being realm was killed with ease. If there were two more of them, they could easily kill the Supreme Being realm expert. There was no pressure at all. Although this kind of thing was expensive to make, as long as it could be made, it didn't matter how much money it cost. After all, this was a weapon that could be used against Supreme Being realm experts. Even the Wuxia city needed it. This thing is quite powerful. Li Tianqing was also a Supreme Being realm expert. With a glance, he could clearly feel the powerful fluctuations in it. If he was not careful, it was very likely that he would be penetrated. After all, if an ordinary Supreme Being realm expert was in this state, under normal circumstances, his defensive power would be far inferior to these abyssal monsters and primitive beasts. It was just that he was slightly stronger than ordinary people. It was very easy to be killed in an instant. Even if you wanted to block it, it would be impossible. By the time you reacted, you would already be dead. Young master, can you go down and do the test? Xiao Zhao asked boldly. Everyone was very surprised when they heard this. Was Xiao Zhao going to take this opportunity to eliminate Li Zhongjiu? Of course, it was impossible. If not for Li Zhongjiu's protection, Xiao Zhao would have been assassinated by many people. After all, Xiao Zhao had too much power in his hands. As long as Li Zhongjiu was around, no one would dare to touch Xiao Zhao. Okay, I'll try. Li Zhongjiu's curiosity was aroused. His realm was different from these people. Therefore, he could tell at a glance that the power of the Yuan railgun was extraordinary. Just now, the abyssal monster had used a variety of changes in direction and speed, but the Yuan railgun easily killed it without any hesitation. Therefore, Li Zhongjiu was very curious about how this thing could lock on. If this thing could kill Li Zhongjiu. Now Li Zhongjiu did not dare to say that he was the best in the world. But at the very least, it wouldn't be easy to kill him. Therefore, Li Zhongjiu agreed without hesitation. Qi Yan ran, and the others were even less worried. According to Li Zhongjiu's words, if this thing could kill him, then he wouldn't need to work so hard to cultivate. That would be a good thing. Then, Li Zhongjiu came to the scene and faced the Yuan railgun in front of him. The Yuan railgun in front of him looked very simple. It did not even pose any threat or damage. He looked at the slight advantage of the distance. Li Zhongjiu was also worried that the Yuan railgun would not be able to hit him. Since it was a test, Li Zhongjiu had to use a real standard to deal with the Yuan railgun. Therefore, Li Zhongjiu also walked forward. After a dozen steps, the distance between them was directly shortened to a range of 10 meters. Li Zhongjiu stood in front of the Yuan railgun. Turn the power to the maximum. Xiao Zhao did not hesitate. Some of the researchers below also started to make adjustments. He had even changed the barrel of the cannon. Just the barrel in front of them was enough to cover half of Li Zhongjiu's body. It seemed to have a certain degree of threat. Come on. Li Zhongjiu gestured to Xiao Zhao to start. Everyone widened their eyes, wanting to see how powerful this thing was. The atmosphere at the scene also seemed to be a little nervous and excited. Even Li Zhongjiu's eyes became extremely serious. Boom! The Yuan railgun instantly blasted out. Li Zhongjiu saw a ray of blue light appear in front of him. He instinctively raised his hand to block. At the same time, he released his Yuan Qi of the Absolute Saint realm. He directly blocked in front of him. A powerful wave of air directly blasted towards Li Zhongjiu. When this aura covered his body, Li Zhongjiu could clearly feel a burning power. He was injured. A trace of shock appeared in Li Zhongjiu's eyes. After all, it was very rare for him to be seriously injured. Even when he fought with the Tombstone Spirit, he was not injured. The Tombstone Spirit only temporarily sealed him and did not cause him any harm. You can trap me, but you can't hurt me. That was roughly what it meant. However, the Yuan railgun in front of him had such power, which made Li Zhongjiu very surprised. Half of Li Zhongjiu's body was directly slashed by this terrifying power. Immediately, this half of his body felt like it was being destroyed. On the surface, a lot of power was condensing. Li Zhongjiu also quickly recovered from his injuries. This is good. Li Zhongjiu was also very surprised. How many do you have now? Li Zhongjiu then asked. Currently there are a total of 3. This one is the most stable. After seeing Li Zhongjiu block it, Xiao Zhao also heaved a sigh of relief. After all, she was very worried that Li Zhongjiu would be directly blasted to death. If that was the case, Xiao Zhao herself would become an extremely evil person who had committed a heinous crime. It would even be too late for regrets. Bring all 3 of them up. Adjust this thing to the maximum power output. Li Zhongjiu was also a little excited. This thing was very powerful. If there were enough of it, it would definitely have a great effect. Chapter 1595. Just the power of one cannon had almost injured Li Zhongjiu. Now, Li Zhongjiu even took the initiative to ask for 3 cannons to attack at the same time. This caused everyone to become nervous. But at the same time, they were very interested in the Yuan railgun. It was because the Yuan railgun could actually pose a threat to Li Zhongjiu. That move just now wasn't something that a Supreme Being could withstand. It was estimated that even the Supreme Being experts present might not be able to withstand it. As for Li Zhongjiu's request, of course, Xiao Zhao did not refuse. He directly ordered people to take out the 3 cannons. The 3 yuan railguns were tested. They restocked the energy, and were waiting to attack Li Zhongjiu at any time. Come on, Li Zhongjiu said. The people outside were also very worried. Isn't that kid too arrogant? Li Tianqing could not help but worry. Qi Xiaohun and the others were also present. But their women did not come. If a woman came to such an occasion, she would definitely not be at ease. It's hard to say, but Zhongjiu's strength has not been fully displayed. Qi Xiaohun analyzed. Qi Yanran also nodded. Zhongjiu has the chaotic body. Although the energy is strong, it can at most injure him. But there is no way to kill him. It's good that he won't die. Li Tianqing nodded in agreement. Let's not talk about other things for now. It was fine as long as he was alive. No matter what the situation was, as long as he was not dead, there was no problem. Therefore, this matter was not a big deal to them. Hearing Li Tianqing's words, the people around were also very embarrassed. This father's education was really on point. At this moment, the 3 yuan railguns were ready. Li Zhongjiu released a defensive wall formed by his will. Seeing Li Zhongjiu's action, Qi Yanran's eyes were also shocked. If the power of this energy was strong enough to injure Li Zhongjiu's willpower, it would be very difficult for him to recover. This was not a physical injury that could be healed with pills. In the process itself, it would be an extremely dangerous act. Although the crowd could not see Li Zhongjiu's wall of will, they could not see it. However, they could clearly feel that Li Zhongjiu was releasing a very powerful energy. Fire! Xiao Zhao ordered. The 3 yuan rail cannons fired at the same time. Boom! The intense light tore through the space rapidly, tearing apart everything before it. At this moment, the entire space violently shook. Qi Yanran raised her hand and used her elemental energy to protect everyone present. This was because when the energy of the yuan railgun collided with Li Zhongjiu's wall of willpower, the energy of the yuan railgun collided. In an instant, it exploded on the spot, producing an extremely strong and ferocious fluctuation. Ordinary people would definitely not be able to withstand this attack. Therefore, Qi Yanran made a move to block this fluctuation, looking at Li Zhongjiu in the field. The light wave of the yuan railgun had ended. Although Li Zhongjiu was not injured, he was forcefully pushed back dozens of meters in the resistance just now. His feet also dragged a long trace on the ground. Moreover, Li Zhongjiu's expression was also quite dignified. Seeing this, he probably already understood. At this moment, Li Zhongjiu himself was clearly under a great deal of pressure. Under the impact of such power, it was obvious that even Li Zhongjiu had already felt uncomfortable. At this moment, he had already pulled himself together. Qi Yanran jumped in front of Li Zhongjiu. Obviously, Li Zhongjiu's current state was not good. How is it? Qi Yanran asked. Immediately Li Zhongjiu waved his hand. It's very powerful. Li Zhongjiu could not help but give Xiao Zhao a thumbs up. This thing is very well made. Continue to strengthen it. In addition, produce as many as you can. Li Zhongjiu called Xiao Zhao over and said to Xiao Zhao. It was very precious to be able to get Li Zhongjiu's help. It could be said that all of this was already very worth it. It also made Xiao Zhao very encouraged. If there is no big problem, 1 year is enough to make 2. No, it has to be faster. Li Zhongjiu shook his head. 2 in a year was too slow. No matter what kind of crime it takes, no matter how many resources it takes, even if you have to catch more talents, you have to make 10 within a year. To be able to find such a good weapon. Obviously, Li Zhongjiu was also very surprised. This ultimate weapon plan also had a very significant effect. Therefore, Li Zhongjiu could be considered to have spoken directly now. He directly dealt with this matter. Very few Li Zhongjiu personally intervened in this matter. Now Li Zhongjiu had spoken. Naturally, he had to complete it even if he died. Okay. Xiao Zhao nodded and said. In the test just now, the power of these 3 yuan railguns was enough to kill a level 1 innate expert. Under the circumstances of continued production and research, the power of the yuan railguns would definitely continue to be improved. After 5 years, 50 to 60 yuan railguns were aimed at the incarnation of Supreme Zheng at the same time. They directly fired one shot to know how powerful it was. Even after 3,000 years, there had not been such a powerful weapon. Otherwise, Li Zongjie would have made this weapon long ago. Could Xiao Zhao find such a weapon? Only then did he come. It was really a very shocking thing. In fact, many things disappeared because they were neglected. It was inevitable for such a situation to occur. After all, not everyone had such huge financial resources as Li Zongjie. In addition, Xiao Zhao had such foresight. The rest of the matters were handed over to Xiao Zhao and Qi Yanran. What Li Zongjie said to Li Tianqing and the others was that he would be in seclusion for a long time. Seclusion. Everyone had long been used to Li Zongjie's seclusion. He picked a good day. Li Zongjie also returned to the Blackwater Forest. The Chaos Bell was still hanging there. Immediately, Li Zongjie entered the Chaos Bell and found the Tombstone Spirit. He said that he was the Tombstone Spirit that was the incarnation of the Great Tao. You said last time that you could bring me into the great world, created by the great emperor of Xintian. As long as you bring me in and bring me back, I will let you go. Li Zongjie said to the Tombstone Spirit seriously. The Tombstone Spirit seemed to have been waiting for a long time. I knew you would come. Of course I can bring you there. I can even guide you through the difficulties and obtain power. At least, it won't be a problem to deal with the incarnation of Supreme Wuji. The mysterious black soul said. It can deal with Supreme Wuji? It's not Supreme Wuji, it's his incarnation. It's what you saw. If it's his real body, it's at least tens of thousands of times stronger than the incarnation. Chapter 1596. It was tens of thousands of times stronger than the incarnation. It was so powerful that it was exaggerated. This caused Li Zongjie to be slightly shocked in his heart. Even before this, Li Zongjie was still complacent about his strength. At least he could become the top existence in this continent. And he had saved the continent many times and resolved countless crises. But he never thought that when a ruthless person came, the entire continent would be directly plunged into such a crisis. It also made Li Zongjie realize how terrifying the strength of these people was. There was such a series of events. So Li Zongjie had no choice but to take this path. In fact, for many people, this was a true path of no return. Once they stepped on it, they would never be able to return. If they wanted to return, they didn't know how long they had to wait. So these things were hard to say. But there was no other way now. 5 years seemed to be a long time. But in fact, even Li Zongjie didn't have the confidence to break through to the celestial realm. Even if he could break through 1 or 2 levels, it would be useless and useless. Although he knew that the Tombstone Spirit must be hiding something, or even a conspiracy hidden in it. But Li Zongjie didn't care. As long as he could become stronger and destroy these damn invaders, it would be enough. Give me a stone from your continent. Li Zongjie directly gave it a primordial stone. The Tombstone Spirit directly pieced the primordial stone into its body. It was on the gravestone that was already broken. Then the Tombstone Spirit also did the same. It muttered something. Suddenly, a dark and gloomy passage opened in front of Li Zongjie. Behind the passage, they could feel waves after waves of ferocious and frightening energy fluctuations, coming one after another. This is a path of no return. I have marked this stone for you. If you want to come back, you just need to touch the power on it. But you only have one chance. Once you come back, you will never be able to return. Perhaps a lot of people were also curious. I only went there to obtain power. As long as I obtained power, it wouldn't matter if I didn't go back. However, a lot of people eventually forgot. Humans are greedy by nature. There was no end to desire. It was like walking into a casino. If they didn't lose everything and get thrown out, they wouldn't be willing to leave. Li Zongjie was an expert from a small world. Casinos naturally had no allure to speak of. However, this was filled with countless opportunities, and countless opportunities to obtain great power. That was the real temptation. It was just like a casino, where one could keep a clear head before entering. However, once they entered, the things that would happen were no longer predictable. What about you? Me? After you go in, I will be free. That's my mission, he said. Tombstone Spirit said. Immediately, Li Zongjio seemed to understand something. The Tombstone Spirit in front of him had said that he was just an incarnation of the Great Tao. Just a mere clone like this was enough to threaten Li Zongjio and the others. Moreover, the Tombstone Spirit itself had come with a mission. As long as the mission was completed, it would be able to take over the Tombstone Spirit. As long as he completed the mission, he would be free. Clearly, Li Zongjio's appearance could allow him to complete his mission. Furthermore, in fact, the small Chaos Yuan Bell had no way of trapping him. When Li Zongjio's figure disappeared into the mysterious space crack, it was true. Qi Yinran, who was standing on the peak of the snowy mountain, was stunned. Suddenly he was stunned. The desolate heaven essence in his hand seemed to have lost its strength at that moment. It had become an ownerless item. It wasn't because its owner was dead. It was because Li Zongjio was too far away from them. It wasn't a distance that could be measured with the naked eye. At such a great distance, it was as if he had been exiled into an endless dark space. There was no chance of returning. It was like an ant walking into a desert. It seemed possible to come back, but in reality, it was already impossible. This was the furthest Qi Yinran and Li Zongjio had ever been separated. There was no other way. You must return safely, Qi Yinran said softly. She kept the white silk that was formed by the desolate heaven essence. If Li Zongjio returned, the desolate heaven essence would definitely awaken immediately. At the same time as Li Zongjio disappeared, in the Black Sea domain far away, Black Sea Overlord was cultivating. At that moment, he couldn't help but open his eyes and look in the direction of the Blackwater Forest. He should be able to return, Black Sea Overlord thought to himself. It was as if he had expected Li Zongjio to head to such a mysterious place. So, that was why he didn't appear. Everything was fated. There were very few people who knew that Li Zongjio had left. Qi Yinran couldn't announce it either. Xiao Zhao had already brought out the ultimate weapons. They were set up on the surrounding icebergs. They were all aiming in the same direction. If Li Zongjio couldn't return, they had to make backup plans. Wuji True Flame Great World. This world was so vast that it was boundless. Every day, countless experts would be teleported up using different methods. Furthermore, it was a training ground. The people in the upper world would also send their avatars into the training ground. It was equivalent to, the lower world wasn't just the Xingwu continent that Li Zongjio was in. The Xingwu continent was just one of the countless small worlds that were as vast as the Sea of Stars. However, there was only one upper world. The cultivators in the upper world had created a place like the Wuji True Flame Great World. It was mainly because the great Emperor Xiantian had created such a world. Therefore, the experts in the upper world would enter the Great World with their avatars to train. As for the targets of their training, other than the checkpoints, difficulties, and missions that existed in the Great World, there was also a very important hunting target. It was the experts from the lower world. They all had many ways to come here. Even if their avatars were destroyed, their real bodies would still be safe and sound. At most, they would lose a little strength. However, once the powerhouses of the lower realms died, they would be dead for real. Even their souls would be refined and devoured by the other party. They would have nothing left. Among these small worlds, the Xingwu continent wasn't considered powerful at all. Li Zongjio's figure landed on the ground. There was green grass under his feet. There were shady trees around him. Chapter 1597. What a strong vitality! Li Zongjio lowered his head and glanced at the grass and trees under his feet. It could be felt that their energy was even stronger than that of a vigorous adult. At the same time, the density of the surrounding spiritual energy was far beyond that of the Xingwu continent. It was at least 100 times stronger. Li Zongjio was surprised. This was equivalent to setting up an extremely large spirit gathering array. In such a spirit gathering array, one could feel a strong resonance. Even if it was just breathing normally, the effect was stronger than cultivating seriously in the Xingwu continent. Therefore, in such an environment, even if there were no fortuitous encounters, there would be a great breakthrough. In Li Zongjio's storage ring, there was a huge hourglass. Once the hourglass reached the bottom, it would be a full 5 years. Li Zhongjiu's purpose in coming here was very clear. He wanted to find more existing spells. The tombstone spirit had already been tortured, but there was no harvest. At the same time, Li Zhongjiu did not trust the tombstone spirit very much. Now Li Zhongjiu was very clear that it was not so easy to obtain the secret scroll of spells. Moreover, the tombstone spirit itself was very problematic. As for its origin, it was impossible to figure out. If Li Zhongjiu was really a tombstone, then he was really treating Li Zhongjiu as a 3-year-old child. This was simply impossible. Li Zhongjiu would not believe the latter's nonsense. In fact, as a newcomer, Li Zhongjiu did not dare to be too careless. After observing the surroundings, he began to walk forward. Always stay in a place like this? Obviously, there was no benefit in staying in this place. Therefore, Li Zhongjiu walked in the forest. He shuttled through the dense forest. Immediately, Li Zhongjiu was quite vigilant in his heart. However, after walking for 3 days and 3 nights, he did not see any people or animals. There were a few times when he was almost killed by some of the plants in the forest. These plants were also good at eating people. If Li Zhongjiu hadn't discovered it early and jumped away early, he would have been eaten by the other party. Finally, on the 4th day, Li Zhongjiu actually saw an incomparably huge city. The city seemed to be made up of countless mountain peaks connected together. However, what was surprising was that this city did not have any city walls at all. The reason why it was so huge was because there were too many tall buildings in it. The forest was just a piece of barren land. The real thing, the thing that had this protection, was this city. At the same time, the truly dangerous place was within this city. Therefore, Li Zhongjiu could be considered to have taken a tour in the wilderness. At the very least, Li Zhongjiu knew what kind of existence such a city was. No matter which direction he walked in, he would definitely encounter such a city. What kind of magic and charm did the city have? It was constantly attracting people to walk in. Li Zhongjiu was not in a hurry. Instead, he stayed in the distance and waited for 2 days. During these 2 days, he saw many people walking into this city. In fact, most of the people who came and went basically rode on their swords. Of course, the way they rode on their swords was more powerful. This was undeniable. At the same time, Li Zhongjiu observed for a while. These people were at most in the absolute saint realm. There were also a large number of higher heaven realm experts. For the time being, he did not see any celestial realm experts. In fact, if the celestial realm experts did not take the initiative to expose their aura, it would be difficult to find them. Hey brother, you also came up from below? Just after Li Zhongjiu observed the situation, he was ready to go inside to have a look. What was going on? No matter what kind of situation it was always necessary to observe the unknown first. He could not blindly move forward under such circumstances. He had to find a good opportunity to do so. However, just as Li Zhongjiu was about to move, a voice came from behind him. This caused Li Zhongjiu to be surprised. Because before this, Li Zhongjiu did not realize that there was someone close to him. How did that person suddenly appear behind him? Li Zhongjiu was really shocked. Someone was actually able to approach him without making a sound. Don't be nervous. I also came up from below. A bald man appeared behind him. He was big and rough. However, there seemed to be a little purity and innocence in his eyes. This made Li Zhongjiu vigilant. At this level, you still think that you can put on an act. How could there be an existence that is so naive and sweet? Thus, Li Zhongjiu paid close attention in his heart. Me too. Li Zhongjiu nodded and said, Hello. My name is Tai Tu. I cultivate the stone mental cultivation method. As long as I don't move too much, I won't leak any aura. Therefore, ordinary people can't discover me. You don't have to be nervous. Tai Tu said. As soon as they met, he directly revealed his identity. Obviously, this also made Li Zhongjiu suspicious. Was this guy really stupid? However, Li Zhongjiu soon found out. Other than Tai Tu, there were several people around him who were similar to Tai Tu's cultivation. These people were all 9th grade absolute saints. In the lower world, they were absolute experts. There was no doubt about it. Li Zhongjiu, on the other hand, had stopped his yuan power at the 6th level of the Absolute Saint realm. If it was converted according to the upper world, that was the acquired 6th grade. There were 3 people on the other side, and all 3 of them were acquired 9th grade. And they specially released one of them to confuse Li Zongjio. They were obviously dealing with someone weaker than them. But these people didn't seem to underestimate him at all. They went all out from the beginning. Li Zongjio also wanted to test these people's skills. He didn't even use the unparalleled sword. He was barehanded. Right here, he even deliberately approached Tai Tu. In Tai Tu's eyes, he had completely deceived Li Zongjio. Without hesitation, he instantly stood up and charged towards Li Zongjio. Boom! Although there were strong and weak people, they didn't seem to be smart. However, he didn't seem to have made any progress in terms of intelligence. All he could do was use these little tricks. It seemed that the people living in the upper world weren't necessarily that powerful. They were even far less ruthless than some people from the lower world, because these people tended to be arrogant. The moment Tai Tu moved, Li Zongjio's figure also swayed. He directly threw a punch to the side. The punch seemed to have hit nothing but air. But in fact, a figure that flew over just happened to land on Li Zongjio's fist. Bang! The strength of a 7th grade innate exploded instantly. This punch smashed the head of the person who was close to him. It turned out that the heads of people from the upper world could also be smashed. Chapter 1598. Innate Level 7. When Tai Tu felt Li Zongjio's power, he was scared silly. He had been observing Li Zongjio for a long time. He was just a level 7 pre-celestial. How could he jump to level 7 pre-celestial in such a short time? It was unbelievable. This was an extremely large span. It seemed like they were the prey. Just by coming into contact with Li Zongjio's strength at this moment, they could already feel an extremely powerful threat. After Li Zongjio punched the man, the remaining Tai Tu, and the other man realized that the situation was not right. After all, to be able to reach Li Zongjio's level with such strength, it would be extremely foolish to fight with him. The most important thing to do was to leave immediately. Staying alive was the most important thing. They had been tricked by Li Zongjio. After he crippled the man with a single punch, how could Li Zongjio let them escape? His figure flashed. He rushed to the side of the 2 men and punched them with both fists. Like 2 dragons coming out of the sea, he punched them. Bang bang! The 2 men fell to the ground and spat out a mouthful of blood. Li Zongjio stepped forward and punched him again. The other man's head exploded. He died on the spot. At the same time, Tai Tu rolled on the ground and was stepped on by Li Zongjio. He couldn't move at all. Spare me, spare me. I know I was wrong. I know I was wrong. Tai Tu admitted defeat without hesitation. At this moment, everything was over. The opponent had such great power. What else could he say? Just as Li Zongjio was about to say something, the person whose head had been smashed just now seemed to have been crushed by the power of the surrounding world at this moment. Bang! In the end, it turned into 8 black beads that glowed. Li Zongjio seemed to be familiar with this kind of bead. He seemed to have seen it somewhere before. He grabbed these beads and brought them over. Soul beads. Li Zongjio saw that the object in his hand was the same as the soul bead that the tombstone spirit brought to the holy martial continent. However, it was obvious that the soul bead in his hand was much purer. They had not been tampered with. Back then, the soul orbs released by that fellow had all been tampered with. What is this? Li Zongjio held the beads in his hand and asked, as if he already knew the answer. However, to the latter, the item in his hand was already an ordinary item. When Li Zongjio deliberately asked this question, he started to panic a little. He even thought that Li Zongjio was playing with him. It was truly soul-stirring. Sir, this is a soul bean. Although he was confused, he still answered truthfully. What's its use? Li Zongjio continued to ask. At the same time, he realized that the corpses nearby had all disappeared. Only the 9 soul beans were left floating 3 feet above the ground. Immediately, Li Zongjio extended his hand and beckoned, summoning the soul beans over. What was the use of soul beans? When Tai Tu heard Li Zongjio's question, he was even more shocked. Either Li Zongjio really didn't know what was going on here, or he was playing with him. However, when Tai Tu saw Li Zongjio's expression, he didn't think that Li Zongjio was pretending. It seemed like he really didn't know what was going on here. Soul beans can be used as currency in the 5 main cities. They can also be absorbed for cultivation. These are the rules of this great world. Every day, the number of soul beans on your body will decrease by 1. If all of them disappear, you will be killed by the power of this great world. Li Zongjio frowned. If that was the case, why hadn't anything happened to him these days? If you have just arrived in this great world, you will be protected for 7 days. Tai Tu said. If that was the case, tomorrow would be the last day. He had almost died unknowingly. Li Zongjio had never encountered such a situation. The shock in his eyes was very real. A situation like this was really interesting. This meant that you had to kill people every day. The more people you killed, the more time you would be given. Li Zongjio didn't expect the legendary upper world to be such a hellish place. However, at the same time, Li Zongjio also understood. This wasn't the real upper world. It was just a training space created by the experts of the upper world. After that, Li Zongjio had a friendly chat with the iron-headed young man. He had finally figured out the rules of this great world. First of all, there were a total of 5 main cities in the Wuji True Flame Great World. These 5 main cities were all places of residence. The effect of cultivating in these cities for a day was comparable to cultivating in the forest for a month. Therefore, it was a very precious opportunity for these absolute saints, and even Xiantian realm masters. Anyone would want to cultivate in such an environment. However, after entering the city, the only thing they needed to use was soul beans. In other words, this was what people obtained after they died. In the wilderness, they could hunt as they wished. However, if they killed people in the city, they would be fined directly. If I accidentally punish you and make you bankrupt, then your life will be gone. However, if you had enough soul beans, it didn't matter if you killed people in the city. There was order in the city, and there were rules in the wilderness. Basically, all the things and resources were in the city. The wilderness was empty. Li Zongjio had seen it before. Therefore, if you couldn't obtain soul beans in the wilderness, you would either be killed by the power of the rules of this great world, or you would obediently enter the city. Everyone would be forced into the city. However, the rules in the city would be even crueler. The chances of obtaining soul beans would be even lower. Otherwise, Tai Tu and the others wouldn't have been able to leave the city. There was no need for them to leave the city. In this great world, as long as you had enough soul beans, you would have the entire world. It's a bloody world. Li Zongjio's eyes flashed with a cold light. However, such a world was exactly what Li Zongjio wanted. He didn't need anything. He only needed things that could increase his strength. Therefore, Li Zongjio was very direct. After answering all of Li Zongjio's questions, Tai Tu's eyes were filled with the desire to live. He hoped that Li Zongjio would let him go. All right, thank you for your cooperation. Li Zongjio finished speaking. Before Tai Tu could be happy, he punched Tai Tu's head. Instantly 9 soul beans appeared. Chapter 1599. Other than the soul beans that the 3 of them had turned into, Li Zongjio also picked up the bags under the 3 of them. This kind of bag seemed to be specially made to store soul beans. So poor. In total, he only obtained 50 soul beans in the end. No wonder these people didn't dare to stay in the city. With such a poor appearance, if it was Li Zongjio himself, he would be embarrassed to stay. However, these 3 people only had soul beans left on their bodies. He didn't have any other worldly possessions. From the moment the corpse was shattered into pieces, Yi Zichen was shocked to the core. Li Zongjio already knew. The power of the rules in this great world was extremely terrifying. To ordinary people, this was an irresistible force. To everyone in it, it was also impossible to resist. If you wanted to die, then you had to die here. There was no other way to survive. The limitless true flame great world has existed for tens of thousands of years, or even hundreds of thousands of years. It is a good place to pursue power. Li Zongjio kept the 52 soul beads in his hand. Then, he walked towards the main city. Scarlet Soul Main City. It was the name of this main city, because the current city lord of this main city was called Scarlet Soul. And the rule that surprised Li Zhongjie was that as long as you could defeat the city lord, you could become the new city lord. And every day, all the taxes in the Scarlet Soul Main City would also fall into your pocket. It could be said that the city lord would be a supreme expert. With so many soul beans, the process of cultivation every day could also be many times faster than ordinary people. Looks like it's still very challenging. A light flashed across Li Zhongjie's eyes. The power of the bloodline in his body seemed to be gradually awakening in this state. It seemed that this kind of place was the place Li Zhongjie wanted to come. He put away the primeval stone that could bring him back. 5 years later, he would have to rely on this primordial stone to bring him back. As for whether he would be able to return in the end, and how he would be able to return, that would be a matter for another day. After learning about the situation in the Crimson Soul City, Li Zhongjie did not hesitate to enter the city. Although he was curious, on the surface he looked indifferent. No one cared why Li Zhongjie was so young. Once one's cultivation reached a certain level, it wouldn't be a problem for a man to become a woman. What was a mere change in age? Even if it was a puppy on the side of the road, it must not be underestimated. Otherwise, there would be big trouble. Li Zhongjie entered the city to observe. There was no such thing as a huge city, but there was a moat and a large drawbridge. He stepped onto the suspension bridge and walked directly into the city. There were also some soldiers patrolling the streets. His face was expressionless. Everything in the city operated according to the soul beans. Becoming a patrolling soldier was also a process of earning soul beans. He could get 2 soul beans a day by standing guard, which was barely enough to maintain his life. After all, he had to consume a soul bean every day to ensure his own safety and not be directly erased by the laws of this great world. At the entrance to the city, there was a statue that was 50 feet tall in the middle of the road. The statue had a pair of wings on its back, and both hands were holding a huge sword. On the huge sword, there were flames spreading out. Anyone who stood in front of this statue would feel intimidated by the latter's power. Everyone who saw it would definitely tremble in their hearts, and even want to kneel on the ground. The owner of this statue was the Crimson Soul City Lord. This was also a privilege. After becoming a city lord, he could descend on this statue and kill in all directions to intimidate everyone. Only in this way could he manage the order in the city. People came and went on the streets. Even the most lively city in the Holy Martial Continent was several times more bustling than the most bustling city in the Holy Martial Continent. Li Zhongjie strolled around the Crimson Soul City. At the very least, he wanted to know what the place he lived in was like. There were some strange things. Therefore, after seeing it, Li Zhongjie also discovered some interesting things. Looks like soul beans are really the hard currency of hard currencies. In the city, they had actually set up a trading house. In the trading house, Li Zhongjie also saw the secret scroll of incantation that he needed. However, the price of this secret scroll of incantation was at least 1,000,000 soul beans. Clearly, this incantation was a very precious item. There were also many things: magic treasures, armor, weapons, pills, mansions. They could all be found in this trading house. Li Zhongjie only had a pitiful 50 soul beans in his hands. Therefore, he had no way to continue reading. Earn soul beans. It became the most important thing. The most direct method was to rob. Of course, he had to fight outside the city. If he fought in a place where fighting was not allowed in the city, he would be fined at least 1,000 soul beans. If soul beans broke something in the city, he would have to pay a high price as compensation. It was hard to say what would happen in an instant. Immediately, Li Zhongjie found an inn. This inn also collected soul beans. A good room. Li Zhongjie said, 10 soul beans a day. How many days do you want to stay? The shopkeeper said expressionlessly, as if he was an emotionless stone man. He stood behind the counter. 4 days. Li Zhongjie took out 40 soul beans. He had obtained 52 soul beans from Tai Tu and the others. After giving out 40 soul beans in one go, he still had 12 soul beans left. These soul beans had to be kept with him. Although Li Zongjie was confident, he had to leave a way out for himself. The shopkeeper put the soul beans in a box. Then he gave Li Zongjie a key. 8th floor, turn right, second room. The shopkeeper said. Li Zongjie picked up the key and went to his room. He rested for a while, and at the same time he sorted out some information in his mind. If he fought for it bit by bit, he didn't know how long he would have to wait. Moreover, there were many ways to increase his strength. Even Li Zongjie saw some pills. The prices seemed to be quite good. Li Zongjie needed some top-grade pill recipes. He needed to increase his strength. Some of the skills he had learned in the Xingwu continent were nothing compared to the ones he had learned in this world. But at the very least, Li Zongjie was able to adapt quickly. Unparalleled sword was in his hand. Under the rules of this great world, unparalleled sword couldn't be revealed. Li Zongjie's current strength wasn't enough to reveal it. Chapter 1600. Li Zongjie rested for a night. Then he went to the mission residence. In this kind of mission residence, one could see all kinds of recruitment information. As long as you had enough strength to complete it, you could go to the designated location to sign up. Li Zongjie browsed through it. It was like a mercenary mission. Most of them were just some simple personnel recruitment, doing some ordinary things. Some people had already established their power in the main city and formed a sizable force. For example, buying a mansion or doing some kind of business. Would this kind of person also appear? Recruiting when there wasn't enough people? Some would also recruit some hitmen to complete some killing missions. Li Zongjie took a fancy to one of the missions. Rescue mission? There was a rich man's daughter in the city who had been kidnapped by the Poison Dragon Mountain stronghold. Recently, the rich man's family in the city had been recruiting people to save their daughter. Now they had recruited many experts. However, there were still 2 empty spots among the 30 people. Just by participating and reaching the Poison Dragon Mountain stronghold, you can get 50 soul beans. If you save the rich man's daughter, you can get 500 soul beans. Li Zongjie's eyes lit up. At least for now, this mission was simple and convenient. Most importantly, during this process, killing enemies would increase the soul beans. Moreover, as long as the fatal blow was delivered by you, the soul beans would belong to you. The so-called soul beans increase. For example, if this Hotian rank 7 bandit was killed, you would get double the soul beans. Therefore, this was what Li Zongjie took a fancy to. East of the city, Sure family. When Li Zongjie saw the contact address, he hurriedly made his way towards the Sure family in the east of the city. Sure family courtyard. There were a total of 8 people who came to apply. However, only 2 people were needed in the end. They were in charge of the selection, and were also in charge of this mission. They were the Sure family's #1 expert bodyguard, Sure Buyu. Like his name, he was taciturn. His resolute gaze was like a knife that could pierce through your heart at any time. Sure Buyu was wearing a short black suit, revealing the muscles on his arms. It looked like it was filled with power. It was said that Sure Buyu could crush a Xiantian expert with his bare hands. Sure Buyu's sharp eyes sized up the 8 candidates present. This operation could be said to be extremely important. They could not allow anyone to fool around and swindle soul beans. My name is Sure Buyu. Now each of you punch me once. If you can make me retreat, then you'll be qualified. The 7 of them looked over. Li Zongjie looked around the rich man's courtyard. The style of this courtyard was pretty good. The garden design was unique. He just didn't know how many soul beans it would take to buy it. Li Zongjie was the latest to arrive, so he was the last in line. 5 of the 7 people in front of him? His fist was weak and powerless. But fortunately, there were 2 with decent strength. Using all their strength, they finally forced Sure Buyu to take a step back. Although Sure Buyu was not very satisfied, he had no other choice. Time was of the essence, and there was no room for delay. Okay, it'll be the 2 of you. Li Zongjie was stunned. What was this? That was it. The rules of the game were obviously wrong. Li Zongjie immediately shouted. Wait a minute, Li Zongjie said. The rest of the people also looked over one after another. Although age and appearance were not a problem, one's aura was also very important. This was a sign that belonged to experts. Whether one was an expert or not, others could tell at a glance. Li Zongjie was a scholar who had never killed a person, not even a chicken. How could such a person have the face to come to such a place? The limitless true flame great world had existed for countless years. Other than countless people who came from the lower world, there were also many people who lived here. It formed a feeling that they would always be in the underworld. Only here, they had to live every day and fight for their lives. But there were also many people who were not good at killing, but other things. This was an action full of blood and killing. Li Zongjie was such a weak scholar. Was he here to freeload? Among the 7 people, both the winners and losers could not help but laugh at Li Zongjie. Furthermore, in their eyes, someone like Li Zongjie shouldn't have appeared in this place. Shibuya also furrowed his brows. But because he was a man of few words, he did not say anything. Li Zongjie didn't care about the disdainful gazes directed at him. How many steps did they push you back just now? Li Zongjie asked. How many steps did they push him back? Shibuya said disdainfully. 1 step. To be able to push him back this step, it was because the ladder went a little easy on him. Otherwise, these people would not even be able to push him back half a step. Li Zongjie pointed. About 30 steps away from a rattan chair. Do you believe that one punch of mine can make you feel at ease on the rattan chair immediately? Li Zongjie said indifferently. What kind of presumptuous words were these? Shibuya himself also sneered. The rest of the people also laughed at him. Everyone laughed. But Li Zongjie also smiled slightly to show his politeness. Shibuya gradually let go of his smile. He was already prepared to teach this arrogant young man a harsh lesson. Come, Shibuya said. But Li Zongjie threw out a palm across the air. When he was 6 steps away from Shibuya, he threw out a palm in the air. Bang! Shibuya originally thought that this was a weak move. But when he was hit by the real attack, he also immediately understood how terrifying the might of this move was. Without a doubt, Shibuya was directly thrown out. He flew accurately to the rattan chair 30 steps away. Bang! Immediately he sat down on the chair. Everyone was shocked. Shibuya was also an expert in external strength, and his lower body was as stable as the roots of an old tree. But he was instantly thrown out of the ground by Li Zongjie, and he fell on the rattan chair in an instant. Most importantly, Shibuya was not injured. To be able to control the power in such a way, it meant that if Li Zongjie wanted to smash his body, it would only take 1 palm. An expert, an absolute expert. Shibuya did not think that he actually made an error of judgment. Li Zongjie in front of him was an absolute expert. There was no doubt. As for the murderous aura, that was also because Li Zongjie's aura had been completely cultivated to a restrained level. This kind of person looked amiable. But if he fought, just the aura that erupted from his body could turn into countless knives and tear you to pieces. Li Zongjie smiled and withdrew his hand. Young hero, you have great skills, great skills. A middle-aged man walked out of the courtyard. This person was the owner of this mansion. Sherwanjin. Sherwanjin's huge family business would eventually be targeted by others. This time, just these people kidnapped Sherwanjin's daughter and demanded a total of 5,000 soul beans. Even if Sherwanjin had a bit of capital, 5,000 soul beans was still a bit too much. Therefore, in the end, Sherwanjin decided to spend 2,000 soul beans to recruit experts and wipe out all of the people in the Poison Dragon Mountain stronghold. Otherwise, if there was a first time, there would be a second time. With your help, my daughter can finally be saved. Sherwanjin said excitedly. It's my duty. If it weren't for the soul beans, Li Zongjie wouldn't have come here. It was obvious that the job of harvesting soul beans wasn't easy. However, the difficulty of this mission was relatively low. The strongest, Shibuya, was only at innate level 1. Therefore, it was easy for Li Zongjie to send him flying. There was no difficulty at all. Shibuya also admired Li Zongjie's strength. However, the number of 30 people was not small. The person who had passed the assessment was also directly eliminated. Under Sherwanjin's repeated instructions, Shibuya also set off with 30 experts. Riding on the flying boat. On the flying boat, Shibuya was also explaining the plan to everyone. Everyone listened attentively. However, Li Zhongjie saw a square-faced man whose eyes were flickering, as if he was thinking about something. There's a problem. The flying boat left Scarlet Soul City. It flew towards the direction of the deep mountains. Chapter 1601. Poison Dragon Stronghold. In other words, he was the king of a mountain in a forest. Furthermore, it was said that the fort master of this poison dragon stronghold possessed a Xiantian-level poison dragon that was hiding in this poison dragon stronghold, causing people to tremble in fear upon hearing its name. Li Zhongjie was confused. Why do these people look so strange as well? It felt like they were preset. The plot was ordinary. Although Shibuya looked like a real person, he had obvious problems. However, there was a very obvious problem with him. He didn't like to talk, and the emotions he expressed were very wrong. You must be a newbie. When the square-faced man saw Li Zhongjie's puzzled expression, he immediately laughed in disdain. Ah! Li Zhongjie frowned. These are preset plots. The spaceship can't reach Poison Dragon Stronghold. The square-faced man said. Oh! Li Zhongjie guessed it. However, he was still very shocked by such a result. The great Emperor Xiantian created the Wuxia True Flame world, which meant that he had the ability to create worlds. Since he had created worlds, it was normal for him to create people. It wasn't hard to understand. It even felt like, as we usually said, everything was predetermined. That was because when someone created the world, everything had been arranged. But the world created by the great Emperor Xiantian had some flaws after all. These flaws caused Shibuya and the others to feel uncomfortable. Although they looked the same, there was a world of difference. They were real people, but the thoughts and missions that they were given had been brought forward. It was preset. Li Zhongjie didn't ask much. If they couldn't reach Poison Dragon's stronghold on the spaceship, why did the square-faced man come? Why did the others come? Well, obviously, except for Li Zhongjie and the square-faced man, the rest of the people on the spaceship were preset. Puppets. That's what we call them, the square-faced man said. The square-faced man said. At the same time, his eyes were fixed on a certain direction in the sky, as if he was waiting for something to arrive. Puppets. That's an interesting name. At this moment, Li Zhongjie sensed a strong attack coming quickly. The target of the attack was their spaceship. Boom! The spaceship was blown to pieces without any reservation. The square-faced man had already turned over and landed on the ground the moment the spaceship was hit. Whoosh! Li Zhongjie didn't land on the ground. Instead, he was looking for the direction of the explosion. What? Li Zhongjie's body rose to the sky. But he saw a small spaceship in front. On the flying boat, there was a cannon that was emitting black smoke. Clearly, it was the explosion of this thing that blew up the flying boat. Shibuyu's body was also in the air. However, the rest of the Hotian realm cultivators all fell to the ground and were heavily injured. Look at that again. The square-faced man had already hidden himself in the forest, disappearing without a trace. Li Zhongjie could see that the other party had set up a formation in this place in advance. Now he was using the power of this formation to hide his body. It was smart. Shibuya clenched his fists. He stared at the small spaceship with the cannon in front. When Li Zhongjie saw this cannon, he was so shocked that his jaw almost dropped. Origin railgun. Even Li Zhongjie himself was stunned. The Origin railgun actually appeared here. But the other parties? The Origin railgun was obviously an upgraded version. It was different from the one created by Xiao Zhao and the others. It was much more advanced. Li Zhongjie naturally believed that this should be a product of the upper world or other worlds. It seemed that all things developed in the same direction. Since this upper world already had it, it meant that the Shengwu continent was also walking the same path that this upper world had once walked. At least now, the Shengwu continent could be considered to have touched this level, which was related to the laws of the world. But here, they could find even more advanced technology. This made Li Zhongjie's eyes light up, bringing the advanced technology of this upper world to the Shengwu continent. Naturally, it could also strengthen the defense of the Shengwu continent. But now the most important thing was, it was to improve his strength. The armed forces of the Shungwu continent could be considered to be sufficient. If he encountered a real expert, these things would still be useless. Shibuyu, you want to attack the Poison Dragon Mountain stronghold? It's simply wishful thinking. It was obvious that the people on this small spaceship were also the minions of the Poison Dragon Mountain stronghold, but because of the existence of the advanced origin railgun in their hands, so they could threaten Shibuyu. Shibuyu's body was also shaken by the explosion just now. If it wasn't for his innate origin energy protecting his body, he would have been crushed. Just now, he would have been directly blown to pieces. Those who were not strong enough had already been turned into ashes. Li Zhongjiu also saw that on the ground, there were many people from the Poison Dragon Mountain stronghold who were attacking on the ground. Some people who were seriously injured, but not dead, were also attacking on the ground. It was very cruel and very real. It seemed that these puppets were not easy to deal with. These puppets died again? Then they also turned into soul beans. However, these soul beans automatically fell into the hands of these people who were attacking on the ground. Others could not take them away. After Li Zhongjiu took a look, he also felt that this kind of setting was rather interesting. But no matter what, the logic was the same. It was fine as long as the enemy was crippled. This was the hard truth. At this moment, Shibuyu's fighting strength had obviously decreased greatly. But in order to go to the Poison Dragon Mountain stronghold and save his young miss, he still carried his seriously injured body and rushed forward. Boom! The opponent once again fired out an origin railgun. When the square-faced man who was hiding on the ground saw the second shot, he shook his head regretfully. No one could avoid the second shot. Li Zhongjiu had probably been blasted into pieces by now, but after waiting for a while, the square-faced man was shocked. Looking up at the sky, another explosion was heard. He saw that the Poison Dragon Mountain stronghold's flying boat had actually exploded out of thin air. Boom! The flying boat exploded, and two small fries fell from the sky. Li Zhongjiu, on the other hand, grabbed the high-grade origin railgun amidst the flames. Good stuff. Li Zhongjiu took a look at the origin railgun, then put it away. The operation of the origin railgun. Not everyone knew about it. Coincidentally, Li Zhongjiu knew how to use it. It was mostly because Xiao Zhao had led people to research this origin railgun, although it was only a low-level version. But this thing was all different and had the same result. He just needed to familiarize himself with it a little. Shibuyu also thought that he was going to die, but before he could see clearly, Li Zhongjiu had already finished off the opponent, which shocked Shibuyu. He didn't expect Li Zhongjiu to be so powerful. How is this possible? When the square-faced man saw this, his eyes widened, and he looked at the scene in front of him in disbelief. He didn't know how many times he had participated in this rescue mission. Shibuyu had never survived that shot. Basically, when the second shot appeared, he was already dead. Then, he just needed to wait for everyone in the Poison Dragon Mountain stronghold to leave, and then he would arrive at the Poison Dragon Mountain stronghold and complete the mission. He would receive 50 soul beans. However, this array formation of his would be easily destroyed by the other party. It was not an easy task to build it up. It was precisely because of this that it wasn't easy to carry out this mission continuously. But these years, he had repeated this mission at least 100 times. He had seen all kinds of situations, but this was the first time he saw the Poison Dragon Mountain stronghold's flying ship being shot down. Whoosh! Whoosh! Li Zhongjiu and Shibuyu landed on the ground. Shibuyu immediately coughed and spat out a mouthful of blood. It was obvious that he wouldn't live for long. His internal injuries were too serious. When the two of them landed, 10 or so people from the Poison Dragon Mountain stronghold rushed over. These people were originally going to do the last hit on the ground, but when they saw the flying ship being shot down, they rushed out without hesitation. A sharp sword appeared in Li Zhongjiu's hand. He waved the unparalleled sword easily. Immediately, a terrifying sword chi killed all the people around him. They were all 5th level pre-celestial. They were only 5th level absolute saints. However, Li Zhongjiu's killing of these people now had bonuses. A total of 12 people and 120 soul beans were taken by Li Zhongjiu. Not bad. Li Zongjie was very satisfied. The square-faced man who was hiding in the distance was stunned. Immortal weapon. This young man was actually an expert with an immortal weapon. It was simply shocking. After the danger was gone, the square-faced man walked out with a nervous heart. I didn't expect to meet an expert. I'm Hong Long, Li Zongjie. Li Zongjie cupped his hands and said. At the same time, the two of them looked at the heavily injured Shibuyu. As if he could see Li Zongjie's reluctance, Hong Long said slowly. I've participated in this mission hundreds of times. His fate is here. Did that mean that no one could save him? Li Zongjie, on the other hand, laughed. Fate? I don't believe in fate. I believe in myself. After saying that, Li Zongjie injected a surge of yuan energy into Shibuyu's body. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.